Good morning. Welcome to St. Francis of Assisi in Prairie View, Texas. I am the Reverend Rhonda Rogers, and it is our pleasure to worship together with you this morning. Our opening hymn is Lead Us, Heavenly Father, hymn number 559 from the 1982 hymnal. Blessed be God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
And blessed be his kingdom, now and forever. Amen.
Almighty God, to you our hearts are open, all desires known, and from you no secrets are hid. Cleanse the thoughts of our hearts by the inspiration of your Holy Spirit, that we may perfectly love you and worthily magnify your holy name through Christ our Lord.
Amen.
Glory, glory, hallelujah. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. O God, you declare your almighty power chiefly in showing mercy and pity. Grant us the fullness of your grace, that we, running to obtain your promises, may become partakers of your heavenly treasure. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever.
Amen. Thanks be to God.
He shall say to the Lord, you are my refuge and my stronghold, my God in whom I put my trust. He shall cover you with his pinions, and you shall find refuge under his wings. His faithfulness shall be a shield and buckler. Of the plague that stalks in the darkness, the door of the sickness that lays waste at midday. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I am with him in trouble. I will rescue him and bring him to honor.
Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
Jesus said to the Pharisees, there was a rich man who dressed in purple and fine linen and who feasted sumptuously every day. At his gate lay a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who longed to satisfy his hunger with what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs would come and lick his sores. But the poor man died and was carried away by the angels to be with Abraham. The rich man also died and was buried. In Hades, where he was being tormented, he looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. He called out, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am in agony in these flames. But Abraham said, Child, remember that during your lifetime you receive your good things, and Lazarus in like manner evil things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. Besides all this, between you and us, a great chasm has been fixed, so that those who might want to pass from here to you cannot do so, and no one can cross from there to us. He said, Then, Father, I beg you to send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, that he may warn them, so that they will not also come into this place of torment. Abraham replied, They have Moses and the prophets. They should listen to them. He said, No, Father Abraham, but if someone goes to them from the dead, they will repent. He said to him, If they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, neither will they be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead. The Gospel of our Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
You may be seated. Now that he's dead and was being tormented, the rich man finally noticed the chasm. He was no longer comfortable with a full belly and in a nice house. He finally noticed that there was someone on the other side. He noticed that there was this gap. And because of this gap, he was suffering. He noticed, but did he see? Was he convinced? I'm not so sure. Because the first thought he had was to take away Lazarus' comfort and to have Lazarus cross the chasm to serve him and relieve him of his discomfort. There was no thought to Lazarus once again. Now when Abraham chides him and reminds him that you already had your good things and Lazarus suffered all his life, And so he's comforted, and you're going to have to hang out here with me and be in agony. And no one can cross that chasm. So, sorry, bud. And then he finally thinks of his brothers and asks Abraham to please send somebody back home to tell them, don't do what I did, or you're going to end up where I am. And Abraham replies, if they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, neither will they be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead. The chasm wasn't new. It was always there. Lazarus looked across that chasm every single day. Every day he sat outside, sleeping on the street, wet on rainy days and cold on winter ones, every day hungry and thirsty. Every day the chasm he could not cross loomed in front of him. He couldn't bridge it or close it. And the rich man certainly wasn't going to reach across it. He didn't appear to see it at all, and if he did, it didn't bother him that it was there. And the chasm still isn't new. Wealth and poverty are symptoms of the true chasm that affects us all. The chasm in our hearts. The sin that we all hold because we don't see who's on the other side or treat them in the same way that we want to be treated. You can trace it throughout history in the Bible. When Adam throws Eve under the bus, that woman you gave me. When Cain became so jealous of his brother, Abel, that he murders him and hides his body. When David steals Bathsheba from Uriah and then gets Joab to kill him in battle. Or the money changers and the tax collectors that were stealing from the people who were coming to worship God in the temple. I can keep going, and I am. Let's talk about this country, the genocide of the indigenous nations, the bodies that were sold or stolen in Africa and brought and enslaved on this soil. The child labor in the 1900s, children working 7 days a week and 14 to 16 hours a day. And in our world today, the human trafficking, the detention centers, destroying food allocated to alleviate hunger, domestic violence, gun violence, and the list goes on. The chasm is not new. It didn't suddenly appear just because Abraham had Lazarus on one side and a rich man on the other, that there was this chasm between Hades and heaven. There's a chasm between earth and heaven that we live and watch every single day. And just like the rich man, we don't always pay attention to who's on the other side unless we're on the side of torment. And if we see them, we don't often recognize them as one of us. See, the chasm is the gap in our hearts. The gap between the love that Jesus asks us for and the almost love we actually do. The love that Jesus asks us for, to love God, to love ourselves, to love our neighbors, and the love we almost do. We almost love God the way he wants us to. We almost love ourselves, and we almost love our neighbors.
What time is that?
I told you it was 2 or 3 minutes after 11.
Did it go off itself?
Yes.
Well. And
Yeah. Yeah.
oh boy. Oh.
I can't get it to come back, baby.
I don't know what about it then.
I entered the code and it didn't.
Mhm.
I entered the code, but it still won't come back. How?
Oh.
It's not coming back.
Oh boy. Oh. Oh goodness.
Not coming back, baby.
Okay, go ahead and turn it off
Man.
and secure it, please.
I'll take the cord and everything out after I eat breakfast. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Don't worry about it, Dave. Save up to that much by switching 2 unlimited lines from big wireless to consumer cellular. So why don't you pick up your phone while I take this hammer and see how we can cut your bills? Call consumer cellular.
There's the measurement fee, delivery fee, restocking fee, and installation. That's not my department. With Empire's Home Floor Advantage, we have clear, all-inclusive pricing. 800-588-2305.
Today.
You know where America wants it.
Premium stock, baby. Showed up. You should see the underwear I'm wearing.
Everything's been fair this summer.
Let's not lose hold of money. We can worry about it or do something about it. So I take Garvey to help maintain healthy cholesterol safely and naturally. It's odor and taste free with guaranteed potency. I'm taking charge of my cholesterol with Garvey.
We need some help.
I know. I'm going to cashnerUSA.com. And if approved, we can have the money in our account as soon as we say business day.
Go to cashnerUSA.com to apply for the money you need.
All right, we've got breaking news here. The pictures from this church in Grand Blanc, Michigan. We've got new video. The Grand Blanc Township Police said there was an active shooter at the Church of Latter-day Saints there. There are multiple victims. They said the shooter is down, but the church, as you saw in that picture, is on fire. You can still see the smoke coming from the trees. Again, we don't know the connection here. We don't know why the church is on fire. And what the connection is to the shooting. We're working on getting more pictures. These are live pictures now from outside the church in Grand Blanc, Michigan. We're expecting a press conference in the next hour or so. We'll bring that to you as soon as it happens. All right, turning now to the war on Gaza. President Trump wrote on social media this morning, quote, "We have a real chance for greatness in the Middle East. All are on board for something special. First time ever. We will get it done," President DJT. Trump also expressed optimism on Friday, telling reporters, quote, "We're very close to a deal," and also posting on social media, quote, "We're having very inspired and productive discussions with the Middle Eastern community concerning Gaza. Intense negotiations have been going on for 4 days and will continue for as long as necessary in order to get a successfully completed agreement. There is more goodwill and enthusiasm for getting a deal done after so many decades than I've ever seen before. Everyone is excited to put this period of death and darkness behind them. It's an honor to be a part of this negotiation." End quote. Now, days prior to that post on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, the Trump administration says that it presented Arab and regional nations with a 21-point plan for ending the war and establishing regional peace. It's the first time the Trump administration has put forward such a plan, and notably, reporting indicates that it opens the door to a future Palestinian state. Something has not been part of this administration's priorities. Tomorrow, Donald Trump is set to host Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House. Netanyahu says they will discuss Trump's proposal during that meeting. During a speech at the UN on Friday, Netanyahu vowed to continue the war until Hamas was defeated. He has heavily criticized countries which decided to recognize the state of Palestine at this year's General Assembly, and has vehemently voted to never allow a Palestinian state to exist. Former Deputy National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes is back with me. Ben, this is a tricky one because on one level, one just doesn't know what's performative and what's not. But the Times of Israel and Washington Post have received a copy of this 21-point proposal. It's got some stuff in there that sounds intriguing. I don't know how much of a chance you've had to look at it, but it seems like the Trump administration has taken its first serious approach to what might be a long-term solution in Israel and with its neighbors.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it's right to broaden the conversation. I think that there's been this endless loop of ceasefire discussions that are kind of meaningless and absent the broader framework, because part of the problem with the ceasefire talks is it wasn't even clear that would actually end Israel's war in Gaza. It wasn't clear who would administer Gaza. It wasn't clear what the future of the Palestinians would be. And sometimes in diplomacy, you do need to broaden the aperture in order to make short-term progress. That said, I think the glaring challenges here are Netanyahu has vowed that there will never be a Palestinian state, and are moving deeper with settlements encroaching in the West Bank, threatening to annex the West Bank, and threatening to depopulate Gaza. And so the whole question of whether the Israeli government could seriously come on board with this kind of proposal, I think that's the elephant in the room here. And then there's the question of just what does this mean for the people of Gaza themselves? I think part of what is offensive to me about how Trump talks about this is that these people have suffered, years of absolute hell on earth. And he kind of talks about it like it's a board game where he's trying to, get another Nobel Peace Prize win or something. When in fact, what's going to happen to them? They have no homes. They have nowhere to go. There's this Trump Riviera plan where magically Tony Blair is going to be in charge of Gaza. So I also think there's a missing detail here. One, on whether the Israeli government's on board, and two, on what happens to the people of Gaza in this context.
Yeah, Netanyahu is pretty masterful at always saying he'll talk to the president, whatever, but nothing actually happens. I think there's things in this proposal that Netanyahu, I can't see how politics in Israel would allow Netanyahu to actually get on board with. It certainly excludes Hamas from the process, but also recognizes a role for the Palestinian Authority, which neither this administration nor the Netanyahu government has taken seriously either.
That's right, and I think everybody who looks at Palestinian politics knows that the Palestinian Authority is currently constituted, right? It says, Mahmoud Abbas in his 80s sitting in Ramallah has no legitimacy with the Palestinian people. So you have to build up an alternative, version of the Palestinian Authority. That would need a lot of resources coming in from the Arab countries as well. I think the challenge here with Netanyahu is he will try to draw this out, right? And we've seen this in every negotiation since the beginning of the Gaza war. oh, there's some interesting ideas in the president's proposal, and I look forward to sitting down, and then our negotiators will keep talking. And then meanwhile, the war continues, the settlements continue in the West Bank. This is the kind of thing you have to be mindful of if you're heading into this. Donald Trump likes to do things on these very rapid timelines. Like this has his attention. He was just at the UN General Assembly. What Netanyahu likes to do is put things on kind of the back burner here, have a process, have some discussions, have some meetings in different countries. And meanwhile, the same status quo grinds on. That's what you have to guard against if you're the Trump administration.
And possibly just hope that Donald Trump, his mind will go on to something else in a few days, and we will forget about it. Ben, thanks as always. Ben Rhodes is former Deputy National Security Advisor and MSNBC political contributor. All right, coming up, my next guest who knows a thing or two about rallying voters says you can't find a regime that you don't understand. Stacey Abrams joins me to discuss America's slide into autocracy and the steps we could all take to keep our democracy. Spending your free time playing games.
Getting this? They're dry, looking for hydration. Blink NutriTears is a once daily supplement, clinically proven to help your eyes produce more of their own tears for lasting, continuous relief. A different way to support dry eyes. Age-related memory decline? Meet new QNO Brain Health. The first and only tablet to combine 2 high absorption ingredients, clinically shown to improve memory, focus, attention, and more. Trust QNO for more comprehensive brain health support.
Hey, try to roll with something spot you.
Half of the power of Robitussin in every bite. Fast cough relief anywhere. Chew on relief, chew on a.
My wife Gina was born to be a chef. Exploring new foods is her passion. But diabetes would take that all away. Then Gina got Dexcom D7. Now she can see how food affects her sugar levels in real time. With Dexcom D7, she doesn't have to choose between the foods that she loves and her health. I can't wait to see what she creates next. You know it's gonna be good.
We were made for whom? Made to bring her joy. Because when a scary tumor threatened her story, we became her magic. Every nut and board became special. Each hand and tool dedicated to one quest, erasing that tumor and keeping her story alive. Because we were made for whom?
This is like the third year we were 45. We put colon cancer already and canceled brunch.
It's effective and you can see it at home. It's for people 45 plus of average known high risk. False positive and negative results may occur. Ask your provider for polio.
I love my work caring for people. I often assist women who struggle with urinary incontinence, women who have fallen trying to reach the bathroom, or who have damaged skin from too much wetness. It can take a toll on them. At home, I worry for my mother. A lack of sleep due to bladder leakage affected her life. That's why I'm so glad the Pureit system is available for home use. It's an innovative option for women who experience moderate to severe bladder leakage. This external system uses a soft, flexible wick placed outside the body to draw urine away from the body and into the collection canister. It's non-invasive and designed to keep the skin dry and stay in place. We trust it to help her throughout the night, so we're all better off dead and can enjoy the things we love together.
Order yours online at purewickethome.com or call 800-483-3135 today. New external catheters for women and men available for home use. Call 800-483-3135 today. Here is home. We're looking for a house closer to everything, but we don't know where to start.
Find it with Realtor.com. With Real Commute, it's easy to find a home closer to whatever close to your home. You don't understand. Realtor.com.
Meet Miss Baker. She's a credit. She doesn't know know that missing a monthly payment can stay on their credit report for up to 7 years. Don't be like missed payments. Learn how to avoid the records at creditrecords.com. Credit One Bank. For what's in it.
Right now, Republican is so dominant, the hall of power. A lot of people are asking what Democrats should do to swing votes back their way. Stacey Abrams knows a thing or two about that. The former Georgia House Minority Leader ran 2 campaigns for governor of Georgia and lost. But through her work with Fair Fight Action, an organization she founded to fight voter suppression, she's been credited with boosting turnout in Georgia and turning it into a swing state that went for Joe Biden in the 2020 presidential race. Even though Georgia swung back the other way in 2024, going with Donald Trump, voters elected 2 Democratic senators to Congress, which is no easy feat in a traditionally red state, thanks in part to Abrams' relentless campaigning. Now she's speaking out again, this time warning of America's slide into autocracy under President Trump and how we can fight back and save democracy. Stacey Abrams joins me now. She's the host of the Assembly Required podcast. She's the creator of 10 Steps to Autocracy and Authoritarianism campaign, author of the New York Times bestseller, Our Time Is Now. She was the 2022 Democratic governor candidate for Georgia and great novelist. I'm waiting for your next novel to come out. Nice to see you again. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so the 10 steps to autocracy and authoritarianism, I think we finally got everybody on board with, right? We're there. We know we are going down this road. For most people, at least half of all Americans, this is not an abstraction anymore. The problem becomes the sense of loss of what to do. There are people who post on social media all the time. I vote, I get out there, I'm politically involved. What do I actually have to do to stop this slide into authoritarianism?
Well, I think the first responsibility is to recognize, and that's what we've been working on, and I appreciate you laying that out. People need to know what we face. But the second step is activation, and that's what people are hungry for. And so the 10 Steps campaign is really about leveraging what we know works. In a resistance campaign, when you were trying to fight authoritarianism, it's not one thing or the other, it's all of the above. It's the diversity and the volume of activity. And so the 10 Steps campaign says there are 10 steps to autocracy and authoritarianism, but there are also 10 steps to freedom and to power. And those 10 steps are commit, know what's going on. It's making sure that you are sharing what you know in real time, telling people what you're learning, that we are organizing, pulling people together. It can be 3 or 4 people, it can be 3 or 4,000. It's mobilizing, doing one thing that actually puts you in the middle of the fight. It's litigation. It's the fight that we're watching play out in the courts. Irrespective of whether we win, you've got to fight for the rule of law. But it's also things like disrupting. That's what these protests are about. That's what the Know Your Rights programs are about. It's denying them the authority to take our language. It's why I fight so hard for DEI. But it's also making sure that we are engaging, that we are holding our elected officials and those non-elected officials who still have responsibility accountable. And in the last 2, we have to elect and we have to demand. It's not just what we had, it's what we need going forward. And that demand piece has to be just as important as the resistance.
So I picked out a few from your list of 10 things to do to fight back that are, I think, are designed to appeal specifically to people who don't necessarily know what their role. They believe they have a role in the preservation of democracy, but don't know what it is. Number 3 on your list is organize. Create a group of friends, family, and allies who want to work toward a common goal. Pick your issue. That's it. That's organizing. Number 4, mobilize. Once you organize, do something. Share banned books. Help immigrants. Join attendance union. Host public events and regular conversations. It's not about size, but about movement. Number 8, engage. Work with your elected officials to introduce policies and proactive legislation, especially at the state and local levels. Do it yourself if the rules allow it. Start ballot initiatives, public petitions, and more. These 3 are things literally anybody watching right now can do.
Exactly. And the 10 Steps campaign is designed to help you find the resources to do it. What we know is that people are hungry for action, but they don't know where to look. And so as we continue to build up the campaign, we're convening organizations that are doing it. We're putting resources on the website. Go and find something. And what we want to do is bring together as many organizations, as many individuals as possible who may be doing separate things that are part of the 10 steps together.
You said on the weekend prime time in July, Democrats in Congress cannot change the law, but they can change the conversation. I think it's fair to say there are many Americans who may or may not be Democrats, but they certainly don't like authoritarianism, who feel that Democratic leadership has not done enough to change the conversation.
would say that the moment we are in is about not just having our elected officials change the conversation, it's remembering that they work for us. That it is our job, if they don't do it themselves, that we push them harder. And part of the way we do that is by organizing, is by mobilizing. It's why the engagement piece that you laid out is so important. We have to speak up. Sometimes there's a comment made by, or a quote from Dr. King when he and Andy Young met with President Lyndon Johnson in 1965. And when they left the meeting, he said, well, I'm not sure what I can do. President Dr. King said, look, we got to go find the president some power. Sometimes you got to find the conversation for your leader. We want the leaders to lead, but sometimes it's not the leaders we're looking for, it's leadership, and that can come from every single one of us.
Georgia before 2020 is instructive because it doesn't all look like, look, there's some great big rallies in the country. There are some people out there having rallies and 20 and 30,000 people show up, amazing. But in fact, when you take the aggregate of all the groups of 10 and 20 and 30 and 100 and 1,000 people showing up at town hall, in aggregate, it's massive. And then what you saw in Georgia in 2020 was this shift that people didn't really understand how it got there, but it happened.
Yeah. When I started my work in 2010, when I became minority leader, we started small. We did city council races and community events. We went across the state. When I ran for governor in 2018, we added 800,000 new voters to the process. 800,000 people showed up to vote in 2018 on the Democratic side that had not previously participated in those elections. And so by the time we got to 2020 and 2021, we had hit this critical mass. And yes, it is aggregation. We don't have 10 years to wait this time though, but we've got the people in place. We've got the organizations in place. What we need is a convening moment and a convening theory. And that's what the 10stepscampaign.org is about. It's about letting you be who you are and believe what you believe. But if you believe democracy is the right approach, not hypocrisy, if you believe power belongs to the people, the 10 Steps campaign is designed to bring everyone together, irrespective of your party. If your ideology is that democracy is what we deserve, then we are here for you.
But what you believed in 2010 was that people have agency, right? You didn't care about the math. You believe people have agency. So in this moment, the stuff that Trump and MAGA come up with every week, including this memo that came out, this national security memo about going after everybody and everybody's in Antifa now, it causes you to be fearful. It causes you to be frozen and feel like you don't have agency. Your 10-step program is to remind people, actually the agency for the moment is still yours.
Absolutely. When I ran for leader in 2010, the leader was a Democrat in the House of Representatives. One thing I told my colleagues is I've been a minority for a very long time. I am really good at it. And one thing you learn is that you are not alone. You may be in the minority in your community, but you can aggregate those communities because everyone feels it. Everyone feels like they're underwater and they're looking for a lifeline. And sometimes what we need is to hold hands so we can all stand up and travel together. That's what because I am good at the math. And the math said there are more of us than there are of them. But they are trying to overwhelm us with their volume, and we have to overwhelm them with our numbers.
I always ask you, you never answer me. You running for governor again?
I am focused on defeating autocracy and authoritarianism and making sure we have elections in 2026.
Good point. All right. Are you running another novel?
I am. So book 3 in the Avery King series came out this past year called Coded Justice.
Yep.
And her next book will be my editors in May of 26.
All right. I'm excited. Every time the book ends, I'm looking for the next one. So I thank you. Good to see you again. Thank you for being with us. Stacey Abrams, former Democratic candidate for governor of Georgia, host of the Assembly Required podcast. All right, coming up, why hundreds of America's top generals and admirals are scrambling to get an unprecedented meeting called for this week by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and why we may never know anything else that's going on in Hegseth's Pentagon after ordering restrictions on press reporting on the military.
This is the new Dell AI PC with Intel inside. A PC so ahead of its time, it actually helps you save time. Like literal hours. Because it does all your busy work for you. So you can get busy doing things you actually want to do. And who would want more time for that?
When my family, the only thing I could think about was getting back to clean. Bruce gave me a back in the state. music is money. A real comeback deserves a real boost.
You haven't seen me in an ad or commercial in about 10 years for the simple fact that I don't enjoy lying to you. I'm speaking to you today because I can honestly tell you that I've played more than 9,000 levels of Royal Match. And when I heard that the makers were launching a puzzle game, Royal Kingdom, I had to try it. Trust me, they've taken it to a whole new level. You remember how much fun you had as a kid, getting entirely lost in your favorite games? Royal Kingdom feels the same. It's like being a kid again, but with much cooler puzzles than we had. But trust me, download Royal Kingdom today.
For enamel, clinical enamel strain can help us to keep our enamel for a lifetime. It's backed by science. It is clinically proven to strengthen our teeth. I would recommend this toothpaste to everybody. It's really an amazing product. The darkness of bipolar depression made me feel like life was moving on without me. And I had the chance to let it light. Discover Capilida. Unlike some medicines that only treat bipolar 1, Capilida is proven to deliver significant symptom relief from both bipolar 1 and 2 depression. And in clinical trials, movement disorders of weight gain were not common.
Elderly dementia patients have increased risk of heart stroke. Caplyta is not approved for dementia-related psychosis. Call your doctor about immune sudden mood changes, behaviors, or suicidal thoughts right away. Antidepressants may increase these risks. Report fever, confusion, stiff muscles, which may be life-threatening, or uncontrolled muscle movements, which may be permanent. High cholesterol and weight gain, asking high blood sugar, which may be fatal. Common side effects are sleepiness, dizziness, nausea, and trauma. These aren't all the side effects.
Ask your doctor how Capilida can help you. Let it know. Find savings at Capilida.com.
I still love to surf, snowboard, and of course skate. So I take Keno Magnesium to support my muscle and bone health. Keno's high absorption magnesium glycinate helps me get the full benefits of magnesium. Keno, the brand I trust.
When investing leads to questions, JP Morgan Wealth Management has powerful tools, research from expert analysts, and a single view of your banking and investing accounts right in the Chase mobile app. When you want to take control of your financial future, the answer is JP Morgan Wealth Management.
I see my role as convening the best and smartest and most blunt voices. It is the most important moment to convene and connect. As much as truth in journalism, that is the show's pursuit.
This is the time when the best things are made of.
You got this.
We're on what police are calling an active shooter situation in Grand Blanc, Michigan, which is about an hour outside of Detroit. Police say there's been an active shooter at the Church of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc. Let's take a look at live images from the scene. There are multiple victims. We don't know what their condition is. The shooter is down, and what's interesting, you can see the smoke there. The church is actively on fire. We know that the FBI and the ATF are heading to the scene. We don't have information yet on what the cause of that fire is and what the relationship is to the shooter. Which you can see here, multiple emergency vehicles and ambulances on the scene. We are expecting a press conference scheduled now for 1 p.m. Eastern. It was supposed to be a little bit earlier, but they pushed it back. We're still trying to get a handle on what the situation is, but there are victims. We don't know their condition. We do know the shooter down. That's the police word. We don't know what the shooter's state is either. And we do see that smoke coming up from this church in Grand Blanc, Michigan. We'll continue to cover this for you. All right, this coming Tuesday at the Marine Corps University in Quantico, Virginia, the defense secretary, or as some call him, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, is giving an important speech. A speech that's so important, in fact, that everyone in the military command with the rank of 1-star general or rear admiral and above must attend in person. So what's the speech about? Well, after breaking news that military leaders from around the world were being held back home on short notice for no apparent reason, the Washington Post reported Friday that commanding officers are gathering to hear the defense secretary, quote, make a short speech on military standards and the warrior ethos. So in other words, this could have been an email or like a Zoom or a Teams or something like that. The Post has reported a last-minute wrench in the plans. President Trump now plans to attend. He was initially not going to. Secret Service is now going to take charge of security for this highly unusual gathering. Amid all of this, Hegseth is also trying to place more control over what gets reported about his department. New press restrictions from the Pentagon, This is really important. Bar the press from disclosing classified and unclassified information that the Department of Defense is not specifically authorized for publishing. They're trying to ban reporting. Unflattering maybe, but just reporting. It's threatening to bar reporters who don't comply by denying them access to the Pentagon. The memo reads, quote, Department of War information must be approved before public release, even if it is unclassified. Department of War information must be approved for release, even if it is unclassified. A reminder that journalism that requires government approval is not journalism. Major news organizations with credentialed press at the Pentagon are working on a coordinated way to challenge Hegseth's new rule. President Trump himself said journalists wouldn't accept these new rules. Well, that's good that he understands that. Joining me now is Tom Nichols, staff writer from The Atlantic, author of many books, professor emeritus of the National Security at the U.S. Naval War College, and retired Lieutenant Colonel Amy McGrath, Marine Corps veteran, founder of the Democratic Party Majority PAC, and host of the Truth in a Barrel podcast. Welcome, both of you. Thanks for being with us. Amy, this is crazy. Like, you may have never, read reporting from the Pentagon, or you may have never been a reporter in the Pentagon, you may have never been a reporter. This is the government telling you what you can report.
Yeah, well, un-American, first of all, and I think it shows how weak and insecure the Secretary of War really is. He doesn't want his actions, he doesn't want his orders from inside the Pentagon to get out in any bad way. And I think people have to understand how important it is for the press to actually report on our military. And the fact that our military wants that, because there's this trust between the military and the American people. And there's actually a trust between the American military and the world. And when you stop reporting, think about back to the Vietnam era. If we didn't have battlefield reporting, if we just allowed the U.S. Army to just tell us what was going on, that would have happened, it would have been very bad. Think about the pullout in Afghanistan. Think about the fact that things like toxic exposure for our military members, that wasn't exposed by the military, that was exposed by the press. These are very important things, and it's un-American.
So, Tom, I want your take on this, because it is. We exist on the basis that the press, as a representative of the people, hold authority to account. When we haven't seen the report about the Signalgate stuff, but it was given to the Secretary of so-called War, and his immediate response was that it's a witch hunt. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's actually just information that we should all have and that you should learn from.
I think Amy's first point is really important. This shows you just how incredibly insecure Hegseth really is. I don't think this is meant to stop leaks or unauthorized information. I think it's meant to stop leaks and information about Pete Hegseth,
right.
Which is part of the problem here. It is un-American, and all of the examples that Amy gave, those are. Right now, somebody's sitting in the Secretary of Defense's office saying, see, all those things are exactly why we need to stop this, because we don't want stories like that covered. Because this administration thinks of anyone, I was going to say the media, they call the media the enemy, the press is the enemy of people. But really, anybody who is not fully and full-throatedly on their side as a cheerleader is by definition their enemy and an enemy of the people. And that's part of that's even beyond un-American. I mean, that's really authoritarian.
Both of you fall into that category, by the way. We all do at this point. And maybe I'd say, I just think we have to get back to a place where we hear the media, right? Anybody wants to criticize what we do, please. All the ways to get hold of me on social media. The government needs to be the same thing. This country was founded on this set. We get better because people are critical. I don't know why. I don't understand the way in which this works, because you and I can both name all sorts of countries where the government controls the message, and none of it's done.
Yeah, and I've actually served in places in other countries where you walk around and the people there do not have the same rights as we do. This is one of the things that our United States military fought to defend. It's that First Amendment right to say whatever you want to say as an American. It's that First Amendment right for freedom of the press to report on what is happening inside soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines, guess what? They want to know what the military is doing with their sons and daughters.
And then one, you all fought for our right to be able to have this conversation and to continue to. I'm gonna have to both hang on for a second. We're gonna take a quick break. Tom Nichols, Amy McGrath, stay with me, more Bell Sheet, and we're also, you can see the bottom right of the screen, we're following an active shooter situation at a church in Grand Blanc, Michigan. We're expecting a press conference in about 15 minutes. We'll bring it to you as it happens.
Back again, Jeff?
Well, I'm future you. Our doctor figured out why your constipation with belly pain keeps coming back. It's IBS and Zest for help get ahead of it.
Zest is not a laxative. It's a once daily pill that helps you get ahead of your symptoms. It's proven to have you have more frequent and complete bowel movements and helps relieve overall abdominal symptoms, belly pain, discomfort, and bloating. Do not give Linzest to children less than 2. It may harm them. Do not take Linzest if you have a bowel blockage. Get immediate help if you develop unusual or severe stomach pain, especially with bloody or black stools. The most common side effect is diarrhea, sometimes severe. If it's severe, stop taking Linzest and call your doctor regularly. Other side effects include gas, stomach area pain, and swelling. Imagine what could relief from IBS be for you. Talk to your doctor and say yes to Linzest. Learn how Advocate can help you save.
My daughter's name is Mad. Madeline is fun. She's creative. She's very wise for her age. We never told her it was concerning. We didn't think it was as serious as it turned out to be. We were pretty sure it was musculoskeletal. And, it was the worst case. There's a big tumor that they saw, and it's just not fair. She didn't deserve it.
You can join the battle to save lives by supporting St. Jude Children's Research Hospital.
The local hospital referred Madeline to St. Jude, and they're like, "We're gonna cover this." And I lost it in the hospital. You're paying for this?
Families never receive a bill from St. Jude for treatment, travel, housing, or food, so they can focus on helping their child live.
For us to be here as a family and to go through this together and to help her and to have this time with her, it's the greatest gift I've ever been given. To not worry about the finances and just to be able to be here and concentrate on her. Gratitude is not a big enough word for her.
Please call or go online right now and become a St. Jude Partner in Hope for only $19 a month. When you call or go online with your credit or debit card right now, we'll send you this St. Jude t-shirt you can wear to show your support to help St. Jude save the lives of these children.
The fundraising, the donations, they work and they help and they save lives.
Please call, go online, or scan the QR code right now. Become a St. Jude Partner in Hope today.
This is legal unit from Liberty Mutual. We love saving hundreds by customizing your car insurance. And is
When you pay with Jude.
The FBI and the ATF are currently en route to this scene. They may be there already. It's an active shooter situation in Grand Blanc, Michigan. That's an hour outside of Detroit. These are live images from the scene. The police say the shooter has been neutralized at the Church of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc. There are apparently multiple victims. We do not know the condition of the victims or the shooter, but as you can see in the background there, the church is on fire. We also don't know why the church is on fire, but the FBI and ATF are headed there, and we are expecting a press conference in 10 minutes. We will bring that to you as soon as it happens. I want to get back to the conversation I was just having about Pete Hegseth's Department of War. Back with Tom Nichols, a staff writer for the Atlantic, and the retired Lieutenant Colonel Amy McGrath. Tom, it's all a piece of the same BS, right? The Department of War stuff. It's really, if you were to rename it into something that was meaningful at this point, it might be the Department of Propaganda. But the problem is, as you know from your work at the college and Colonel McGrath's work, it's actually serious stuff. There are lots and lots of people whose lives are on the line across the world in defense of our freedoms who should not be negatively affected by the nonsense going on in Hegseth's office.
Yeah, there's a part of all of this that's just inane. You know, it's sort of like if you took the worst kids in high school and then you made them principal and gave them control. You know, what would they do? You know, and they take down all the signs and they put up, it's okay to smoke heaters signs and, you know, do all the things kids would do. Except that it's the Department of Defense.
Yes.
It's not fun. You know, that there are tanks and jets and hundreds of thousands of human lives of people, both civilian and military, serving here. There are nuclear weapons involved. And, you know, letting people loose to kind of be pranksters and trolls. Because I think a lot of what you're seeing from Hegseth, I mean, he's a TV personality. He doesn't know how to do anything else. He's not qualified for this job. The thing he's best at is just sort of, you know, trolling people and kind of doing the whole Fox tap dance behind the podium about how everything is, you know, Joe Biden's fault, that the liberals and all of that usual, you know, carnival barking. So, you know, this meeting where he's pulling 800 admirals and generals, I mean, that's a serious disruption in the
Yeah,
world.
ostensibly, they all have jobs.
Yeah, they have day jobs, they're busy defending the country and, you know, around the globe. And just to show that he can, just to flex, Pete Hegseth's going to drag them in and talk to people who have been in the military their entire lives. He's going to talk to them about being, you know, warriors and stuff.
So we have a warrior right here with us, Colonel McGrath. And interesting, Pete Hegseth had a hard time talking about the men and women in the military. Talks about our boys. He doesn't think women have a particularly meaningful role in the military. He said as much. He's dismissed a lot of the most senior women across the ranks of the military. I gotta imagine that gets deep under your skin.
Well, it does because it's about talent. I mean, we have the most talented individuals in our military, and he has fired many of the best talent that we have. It's not even about, you know, so much about being a woman in the military, although I personally feel like he has very little, if no respect for women in the military. But, you know, right now, this meeting, what's going on, it's also really dumb. Because anybody that's been in the military or studied the military, or basic 101, knows that you don't bring the leaders, the top leaders of your military all in the same physical location unless you have to. And we don't have to, as Tom mentioned. We have other ways of communicating here. So it's just flat out dumb. And the other thing is, I don't think that many generals and admirals really respect Pete Hegseth, and he knows it. And so this is very much a you know, masculine flex here, but to then lecture warriors who have been warriors with way more experience than he has about the warrior
That's the
ethos is
irony.
just laughable.
That's the irony. You call them together to actually listen to you or listen to somebody who's been out there, who's done that, that's one thing. But to just sort of, you know, give people who actually do this for a living a lecture on how to do their job better. That's kind of interesting. Great to see you both. Thank you for being with us. Tom Nichols is a staff writer for The Atlantic, the author of the Atlantic Daily Newsletter, very important read. The retired Lieutenant Colonel Amy McGrath is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran and the co-host of the Truth in the Barrel podcast. I want to just take you back to the situation in Grand Blanc, Michigan, where we do have a lot of pictures. We understand that the FBI and the ATF are on their way. You can see that the media has been pushed yet farther back. But what you see in the distance is smoke. The church is on fire, and I can't tell from this distance whether it's less or more, but there's still a lot of smoke coming, which means there's still an active fire. We do know that there are victims. The Henry Ford Genesis Hospital confirms that they've received patients from a shooting at a nearby church. We do also know that the shooter is down, although we don't know what down means, but this is no longer an active shooting situation. We definitely don't know what this fire is about, why there's a fire at the scene of an active shooting at the church. But there's apparently going to be a lot more information about this coming to us in the next 5 minutes or so. My colleague Alex Witt is standing by. She will bring that to you, and we'll continue to cover the situation and find out more information about what is going on in Grand Blanc, Michigan. That does do it for me. Thank you for watching. Alex Witt reports is up next.
You took a lot of those things.
That's my job. Nature Week. The #1 pharmacist recommended vitamin and supplement brand.
Muddy dirt on your floors? That's not right. Well, catch that. Not only that, we've got a quick fix for all your pet peeves. Y'all can't get comfy? Get Sky High Comfort with Club Canine. Still damp after bath time? Try that dog with the doggy dryer. Puppy had an accident? Ain't no smell or stain that Wiz can't tame. If it's about pets, we got that. Visit MuddyMats.com and claim your 70% off today. Say hello to Muddy Mat and goodbye to a messy home.
Arthritis causes pain in your joints. Unlike pills, Voltaren gel is applied to the site of pain, penetrating deep through the skin to the joint, reducing intense pain caused by inflammation so you can move more freely. Voltaren, clinically proven long-lasting arthritis pain relief.
Dry eyes still feel gritty, rough, or tired? With Mibo, eyes can feel. Mibo is the only prescription dry eye drop that forms a protective layer for the #1 cause of dry eye, too much tear evaporation. For relief that remove contact lenses before using Mibo. Wait at least 30 minutes before putting them back in. Eye redness and blurred vision may occur. Ask your eye doctor about prescription Mibo.
Mia loved to run, but diabetes almost took that away. Then we got Dexcom G7. Now we can both make sure she's staying in range without finger stick. Mia's learned so much about managing her diabetes that she's able to do cross country this year. She wants to be the best in the world someday. I think she can do anything.
I know I can.
Every morning, we face the mirror. Some days, we like what we see. Other days, the reflection tells a different story. Lines that feel deeper than they looked yesterday. Eyes that seem a little more tired. But what if the mirror wasn't a reminder of aging? What if it was a reminder of who you still are? Because confidence isn't about turning back time. It's about showing up, feeling good, and seeing a version of yourself that you recognize.
What's going on today? It just brings a smile to my face.
Plexiderm is a serum designed for real life that works in minutes. For under-eye bags that appear overnight. For lines that don't match how you feel inside. Or the moments when you want to feel sharp, present, and polished. Wow. That's incredible. Because the reflection in the mirror, it should reflect your confidence. Plexiderm. Because the best version of you is still you.
Top of the hour, everybody. Let's take a listen right now to the Genesee County Sheriff there in Michigan about the church shooting at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc, Michigan. Let's take a listen now.
Earlier today at 10:25 a.m. within Grand Blanc Township. First off, I'd like to say our thoughts and prayers go out to the victims of this incident, which is completely unnecessary and unavoidable. The incident that we're going to talk about here today, as I said, was happening at 10:25 a.m. at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is located at 4285 McCamish Road. During this incident, what we know right now is that a 40-year-old suspect from Burton, he's a male, he drove his vehicle through the front doors of the church. He then exited his vehicle, firing several rounds at individuals within the church. 10 gunshot victims have been transported to local hospitals at this time, including one who has been deceased. Officers who were trained immediately responded to the area. One was a DNR officer, and then one was a Grand Blanc Township officer, where they met the suspect and they engaged in gunfire with that particular individual, neutralizing that suspect. And that suspect is no longer with us. As I said, it is a 40-year-old male from Burton. During all this incident as well, there was a fire that occurred, and we believe that was deliberately set by the suspect. We do believe that we will find additional victims once we have that scene secure. That fire was just extinguished by the Grand Blanc Township Fire Department, within the past hour. So where we go from here is we have investigators. We're gonna do search warrants on the suspect's residence. We're gonna find out if there was a motive. We're gonna go through cell phone records, things like that. We had the FBI, they're devoting 100 agents to this area because, as you can imagine, there's a lot of witnesses that were within the church, and that is a lot of witness information statements that we have to obtain. So I'd like to thank all the agencies who responded. The city of Grand Blanc, Genesee County, Oakland County Sheriff's Office, Flint Township Police Department, the DNR, the state police, and ATF. I will provide additional information for you at 5 p.m., but I am willing to take any questions that you have that I can possibly answer right now.
Chief, can you talk about the progress of events? Did the suspect set the fire in the back inside of his vehicle to ventilate the front door, or did it all happen?
So from what I understand, and again, this is just a preliminary investigation right now, from what I have been briefed on, is that he ran the vehicle through the front door, exited, then started firing shots. And we are still trying to determine exactly when and where that fire ended up coming from and how it got started. So we believe it was deliberately set up by the suspect. Yes, the service was active. There was hundreds of people within the church.
Are you sure it wasn't one of the big point early possible to help them fire?
Yes, it is one suspect that we know of at this point. We do not believe that there's a threat to the public. We believe that we have the guy who did this. Sure. We have a couple in critical condition. Like I said, one is deceased. The rest of them are in stable condition. One deceased. The suspect is deceased as well. And then multiple victims are in critical condition. We do believe that we will find some additional victims once we find the area where the fire was. And it's all rifle. That I don't know, I've got, and I can get you later.
Does the suspect known to authorities and
right now, we don't have any of that information, but I'm confident that our investigators, along with the FBI, we're gonna end up uncovering all that information and provide it at a later time for you. Yes, where the fire was. So, and the reason why we can't confirm that just yet is because it was a large fire, and we do believe that there was people out there that were near that fire and they were unable to get out of the church. So we do believe that we will find additional victims once we're able to search that, once there's no signs of the fire reigniting.
So do you believe that victims that are still there, they succumb to fire injuries or gunshots, or you're not sure?
That I'm not sure, but I can provide all that information hopefully at 5 p.m.
The shots were fired.
Shots were fired, yes. No idea how many of us.
Yes, I would return to being there like a worship area.
Yeah, I have not been in, so I can't tell you the layout.
Describe the process of how to or tap those fires and this type of fire. Every training I've seen, it's always been a building that was down. So how do you deal with making sure that we have that situation?
We are here in Grand Blanc Township, and there's a lot of agencies within the state of Michigan. We are specifically trained to go right to the threat in an active shooter situation. And I'm proud of my guys and the DNR who responded to this scene, who immediately took that suspect out, so there was no additional victims. So it was a great job by our staff. Yes, there's 2 law enforcement officers involved. I will be back here at 5 p.m. to give you additional information and hopefully answer some of the questions that you guys went over here today. So, okay. Supervisor Bennett?
Well, Scott, Grand Lake Township Supervisor, Scott, SCLTT, EMNETT. First, let me say we're heartbroken. This kind of violence doesn't happen in our community, and we are heartbroken that came to Grand Lake Township. And we're going to do everything we can to support the families, the victims, and our community getting through this situation. And it's something that no community ever wants to have. And we're going to do our best to do everything we can. We appreciate the outpouring of support from our elected leaders from both national and state, and offering their assistance, and we probably will take them up on their offers. So we appreciate that very much, and we appreciate the community reaching out to us also. So the details are yet to come. Chief Rennie has said, and we'll wait for a little bit later today when we have the rest of the situation assessed. But it may take a little while to do that. But thank you for all the support, and I'm sure the families and victims are going to need that. It's a tragedy that nobody wants to okay. Thank you.
Chief, before you go out, we go over the process of family members, very much ago, we should call to more information.
Yeah, so those family members, they are in a secure area right now. They have been taken over to Trillium, so that's where the FBI will interview them and then release them from there. So
I think anybody writing in the home is not going to request to check and see if that will like if you want.
yes, you can call the Grand Lake Township Police Department, 810-424-2611. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody, that was a very somber news conference we've just heard. That was the Grand Blanc Township Police Chief, William Renier. He was followed by the supervisor of that town there. Let's set the stage for you. This is Grand Blanc, Michigan. It is a suburb of Flint, Michigan, located about an hour or so outside of Detroit. What we have was approximately 10:25 this morning at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that is very commonly known as the Mormon Church. There was reports of a shooting, and in a rather horrifying description, the police chief was able to describe the suspect, who has been identified as a man who's from Burton. That is a city just north of Grand Blanc Township. They have yet to identify him other than offering his age, 4 years old, white male. He apparently drove his car through the front doors of that church, exited the car, and began shooting. At this point, confirmation of one person being shot and killed. Also, the shooter has been, as they say, neutralized. He is dead. There's one person in critical condition, another 8 at least who have been taken to the hospital with gunshot wounds. But what you're also seeing here that has yet to be explained, they cannot give a reason for how this big fire has started in the church, but perhaps most horrifyingly, there is suggestion that there will be more victims found inside that church. The police chief indicated they expect to find more victims. They are unable, because of the magnitude of this fire, to get in there to help rescue anybody who might be trapped in there, but they do believe they have reason that people were inside the church and trapped at the time. But again, how they became trapped, how it was they were not able to escape, how that fire has even started, and it is a big one, has yet to be determined right now. We know that there were hundreds inside that church worshiping at this hour. Again, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, otherwise known as the Mormon Church, there in the Grand Blanc Township, just outside of Flint, Michigan. It is terrible news to report on this Sunday, but to do so, I'm aided right now by Tom Major, who's MSNBC law enforcement analyst and former U.S. Capitol Police Chief. I also have with us Rob D'Amico, MSNBC national security and intelligence analyst and former FBI supervisor. And it seems, as always, in times like these, I have Jim Kavanaugh, MSNBC law enforcement analyst, and former ATF special agent in charge. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Okay, Tom, on the face of what we know, which is actually a decent amount for being so soon after this horrific incident with a fire in the background, give me a sense of where your thoughts lie right now about not only the suspect, but what has transpired and the ability for police to effectively deal with it.
Well, you're right, the press conference was very informative. But what we needed before the press conference was a very terrifying situation. Active shooter cases are bad enough, but when you have an active shooter, in this case, we just learned drove through the front door. The chief said that the suspect started a fire. And it and so add that to the active shooter, just makes it an even more horrific situation. What the worst case may in fact be realized here in that the shooter may have strategically set a fire in a location that trapped members in the church so that they were unable to escape this. So, as the chief said, there may be more victims as a result of the fire. But what the chief also explained to us is that there was a very quick response, and he mentioned that that these officers are trained to respond to active shooter situations, and I think that most police departments, if not all police departments now, understand that when you respond to these things, the first thing you need to do is neutralize the shooter, and whether that means killing the shooter, whether that means taking him into custody, you have to stop the shooting. That is the first thing that you got to do. Obviously, that did it very quickly, and now there's the long process of recovering any additional victims who might be in the church. It's just as horrific a situation as we could have here.
It absolutely is. Let me bring you in, Jim Kavanaugh, again, former ATF, and in that regard, the police chief mentioned that they recovered an assault rifle. Let's talk about the kind of damage that could have been done and any suspicions you may have, given your ATF background, on how a fire of this magnitude may have started.
Right, so I think Tom's exactly right in his analysis here. You know, when someone drives a vehicle through the front door of a crowded building, church, school, business, I mean, it's a very shocking event. It's a lot of shock right away to anybody who's inside. It's very loud, it's violent, you know, there's doors breaking, glass breaking, the vehicle screaming and revving, and then to jump out with an assault weapon, as the chief said, and start shooting the patrons of the church. And then, of course, we do get an excellent response, as Tom described, from two officers. One was a local officer from Grand Blanc Township Police, and the other was a DNR officer, that's Department of Natural Resources. That's a state officer, like a game warden officer. And they're all over the state, and they're highly trained law enforcement officers, and they protect wildlands and game. But they're trained the same way, and this normal protocol is for those officers to get their tactical rifles out of their vehicles and proceed in. The first two or three together, to proceed in, as Tom described, to get to the active shooter and stop him so the killing can stop. I think what we got to understand here, though, is when that vehicle goes in the door of the church and the violence begins, and it's reported, and the officers are dispatched, and they have to arrive in a few minutes. It takes time, and that's the time that the killer might have to set a fire where he might not have been able to get through a locked door where other people were hiding. And so he couldn't get through the locked door, he might have let this start the fire.
Rob, FBI, there will be a presence of approximately 100 agents working on this. Where do they start?
Well, as the sheriff said, start interviewing all the witnesses. There's going to be hundreds of witnesses that were in church. So
they're gonna be talking to all of them. That's the first thing. Obviously, the shooter being deceased, the priority of getting out and figuring out who it is obviously not there. So interviewing them, crime scene, though, the fire is going to prevent, a lot of, trouble for processing that fire scene. And it sounds like there's a bit of a separation distance-wise from where the subject was engaged and where the fire was, because obviously the police officers that engaged and neutralized the subject, weren't, fighting the fire too. But it did add a lot of confusion. So it sounds like there's a bit of separation. And as Jim said, we're not sure, yet how that fire was started, but the sheriff believes it was started by the suspect. And I think that's probably the right conclusion. The coincidence rate is not that high to have that happen at the same time, but was it more remote than inside the church? I think it might have been, as Jim said, that another place. Don't know if he locked doors. You can do that too, in starting the fire, and then that traps them. But that guy's going to be just assisting everyone with the witness statements and the crime scene, and they'll just break it out into teams that can each.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Rob. I appreciate that analysis. All three of you gentlemen, we're going to ask you to stand by with us. We're going to keep following this story. There's other really big news, everybody, to let you know about. We're just getting word that New York City Mayor Eric Adams is dropping out of the race for New York City Mayor. The election coming up this November. Let's go right to Laura Barron Lopez, MSNBC White House correspondent, to talk about what we're hearing. It was just reported, we believe, first by the New York Post, but it was something that he just posted on social media. What are the details?
So it looks like after a lot of weeks of back and forth, Alex, Eric Adams has finally decided that he's going to be dropping out of this race. And even though he had bad poll numbers, he was for a while there saying that he was going to stick in it, that he was going to see this through to the end, even though there was back and forth also with the White House and with President Trump. And now ultimately he has decided to pull the plug here. After pressure from President Trump, who wanted to see this happen because of the fact that they did not want Zohran Mamdani to end up in the mayor's office.
So practically speaking, what does this mean for the race? Where is it believed, presumed, that his votes will go?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the White House believes that him dropping out improves the chances of another candidate beating Zohran Mamdani. And so that's why they want to take
Is that who they believe will be Andrew Cuomo that will, fight off the majority of his vote?
That's someone that they would certainly be happier with ending up in the mayor's office, Alex. And that's potentially who the votes could go to because of the fact that Eric Adams and Cuomo are more in the same mold of moderate Democrats than Zohran Mamdani, who's a self-described Democratic socialist. But the White House was even potentially talking to Eric Adams also about ambassadorships. It doesn't appear as though he landed one of those. It's hard to say at this point, but even an ambassadorship to Saudi Arabia at one point was in the mix here.
It was, and it seemed as if the president had talked about that, sort of dangling a carrot. Eric Adams said no to that definitively at that point, continued in the race for a good couple of months, really. It seemed like the president had pulled back that offer then. Have you heard of any other specifics regarding an ambassadorship or anything, any rumblings about this from the White House?
No, at this point we haven't, but you're right, Alex. I mean, those things were being talked about, and it looks as though in recent days negotiations weren't necessarily working out. And you're right that those initial talks, those potential ambassadorships to Saudi Arabia specifically, were pulled back. At this point, I can't say whether or not there is something else in the mix for Eric Adams. President Trump is known to reward people that he feels like are loyal to him and who ultimately he believes do his bidding. I mean, we saw that the administration, the Justice Department, dropped their case against Eric Adams because Eric Adams had made pretty clear that he was willing to work with the administration when it came to
ICE enforcement and immigration enforcement in New York City. And that led to a number of resignations from the Justice Department of U.S. attorneys because they were so against the fact that the Justice Department dropped their case against Eric Adams.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Laura, I thank you for this breaking news, and we're going to ask you to stick around. We're going to be speaking with you in just a moment. Let me read you what I've got as a transcript of part of what Eric Adams said. It's been an honor to be your mayor, and although our successes, I know I cannot continue my campaign, I strongly encourage whoever takes over City Hall to continue what we've done. As we go now to NBC Shanice Altendorf, who is at the White House, her post as usual. So anything you've heard about this has, first of all, been any reaction from inside the White House, given the history that Laura and I were just discussing about the president's interest in this race. In addition, you spoke exclusively with the president today about a number of topics. So take it away on all, my friend.
That's right. Well, good afternoon, Alex. On way of course, a very easy Sunday today. When it comes to Eric Adams dropping out of the New York City mayor's race, the president has not at this point spoken directly about this issue today, but the president has said that he wanted to see less people running for mayor because he is very, very against Ron Mamdani, who is, of course, the Democratic nominee for mayor in New York, win. So the president has said that he would want to see people drop out. He's sort of showing his support, not officially, but sort of signaling that he would like to see Andrew Cuomo, who is, of course, the former governor of New York, who then resigned in disgrace from that office. But the president, I think, will at some point be praising this decision by Eric Adams. The president has also had kind words for Eric Adams that he's had to ravage a number of scandals himself. That being said, about the fact that I talked to President Trump exclusively this morning, I didn't talk about a number of topics. One of them being Portland, Oregon, and his signaling that he would send federal troops into Oregon to deal with what he sees as crime. I want to read to you part of what the president told me in this interview. Said they are attacking our ICE and federal buildings all the time. This has been going on for years in Portland. It's like a hotbed of insurrection. It looks terrible. Can't have that in the American city. That was President Trump speaking to me this morning. Now, of course, the governor of Oregon has said that he spoke directly to President Trump and told him that federal troops are not needed in Portland, and that whatever he's seeing, the fires and the attacks, that they are simply not reflecting what's going on the ground in Portland, Oregon right now.
Okay. We also understand this is another big breaking news story. The president having agreed to meet with the top congressional leaders that'll happen at the White House tomorrow. Of course, notably, it's less than 48 hours before the government shutdown deadline. What does he see as prospects, Yamiche, for any kind of a deal heading into this meeting?
Well, it's a key question. We know that, of course, the top Republicans and top Democrats in the Congress are going to be coming to the White House here tomorrow to meet with President Trump. That came after the president abruptly canceled a meeting last week. I asked the president what his message for Democrats would be, and here's what he told me. He said, the problem we have with the shutdown is that Democrats want to do all health care for illegal immigrants, people that came in, many of whom are criminal, and that we are removing from our country. We are not going to have that. I said, well, do you think there will be a shutdown? The president said, there is a possibility, yes, and there is, and we're going to cut a lot. And if there is, we're going to cut a lot of people on a permanent basis, and we will be doing that. I'd rather not do that. So the president there, doubling down the idea that the Office of Management and Budget has told agencies that they would go beyond the traditional furloughing of federal workers to permanently fire people if a shutdown were to happen. The president didn't sound optimistic when it came to whether or not a shutdown could be averted, but the president is feeling as though this meeting needed to happen. So we are going to have this meeting. Definitely, it's going to be one to watch very closely, Alex.
Yeah, and Yamiche, as you've been reporting on this, I just want to let you know that the president has released a statement on the shooting in Grand Blanc, Michigan. I'd like to read that to all of you again on behalf of the president. I have been briefed on the horrendous shooting that took place at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc, Michigan. The FBI was immediately on scene, will be leading the federal investigation and providing full support to state and local officials. The suspect is dead, but there's still a lot to learn. This appears to be yet another targeted attack on Christians in the United States of America. The Trump administration will keep the public posted, as we always do. In the meantime, pray for the victims and their families. This epidemic of violence in our country must end immediately. Okay, Yamiche, thank you so much for that, and we will check in with you shortly because there's a lot to talk about today. Right now, though, let's bring in law professor at the University of Michigan Law School, Lee Littman, MSNBC Justice and intelligence correspondent Kimberly, and then it's NBC White House correspondent, back with us, Laura Barron Lopez. So, Laura, I know you've been away for a couple, 3-4 minutes. Any word specifically from the White House is when we could see federal troops, agents in Portland, and are you aware of any planned protests in response to this deployment?
We don't have a word yet from the White House on when exactly troops are going to be deployed. Despite the president saying, and despite them making clear that they directed Pentagon head Pete Hegseth to send troops there, the Pentagon also hasn't said at what point troops, which we expect would be National Guard troops, to be sent to Portland, Oregon. Now, that being said, we do know that the Pentagon, that Hegseth has called a number of generals to meet with him, and that President Trump is expected to attend that meeting early next week. And so it's unclear if they're going to send troops beforehand or after that meeting early next week to Portland, Oregon.
So from a legal perspective, Ken, earlier this month, as you know, a judge ruled that the deployment of the National Guard and Marines to Los Angeles by the president was illegal. Is there a difference with what is on tap for Portland? I mean, because on the face of it, Trump's justification seems the same.
Good afternoon, Alex. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There does not appear to be very much of a difference. And in any normal administration, Republican or Democrat, the lawyers would be taking heed of those court rulings in California and saying, well, wait a second, maybe we can't do this again. But that's not how the Trump administration operates, as we know. They push the envelope every single time. They're going to make every judge in every state rule against them if that's what it takes. And they're going to keep going back at it until the Supreme Court potentially rules on something like this, because it is a bit of an unsettled area of law. But it's pretty clear that in order to deploy to federalize National Guard troops and to deploy them to protect federal installations, certain criteria have to be met. And they weren't met in California, and from what state and local officials are saying, they're not really met in Portland, Oregon either. There just isn't that kind of violence and threat to life that would support such a deployment. But, you know, it looks like we're going to have to litigate it again and see what the judges in this case say going forward.
Mm-hmm. So, Leah, the president said he's authorizing full force for agents and troops. What does that mean? And is there a disconnect between what the president views as full force and what the law allows troops to do when they're facing protests?
Yes, absolutely. So the full force phrase, we have no idea what exactly that means. It does, however, suggest that the president and this administration are not going to pay attention to a federal law, the Patsy Comitatus Act, which the judge in California found the administration was in violation of with respect to the deployment of the National Guard there. The Patsy Comitatus Act says that federal military cannot participate in ordinary law enforcement. They are not supposed to be in the business of arresting people in violation of the law, including mere civil immigration law. All they are supposed to be able to do is protect federal property and federal personnel. But the judge in California concluded that the National Guard that had been declared or deployed there were actually engaged in ordinary law enforcement and therefore violating the Patsy Comitatus Act. Now, the mere fact that there are a few incidents of violence is nowhere near sufficient to justify deploying the military and asking the military to turn on their own American fellow citizens, because under our constitutional structure, it's state and local government that have the primary authority to engage in the enforcement of law and to protect health and welfare and safety. And it's federal immigration officers who have the authority to enforce federal immigration law, not the military. So the mere fact that there are some protests and disruptions is nowhere near legally sufficient to justify the deployment of these federal officers, much less have them engage in ordinary law enforcement.
Okay, but I'm going to offer what Leah, Trump and DHS are citing, which is arrests outside of a Portland ICE facility as the reason for this crackdown, which means they are trying to deploy federal forces to help support federal forces, if you will, right? Because the attacks they're citing are on ICE. They also are including what they say are these Antifa-related threats to dox or harm ICE officers back in July. Of course, violence and doxing are completely unacceptable forms of protest, but are these examples enough to launch a large federal response? Would those reasons hold up in court?
they shouldn't hold up in court. Again, the fact that there might be some individuals, in among all of the vast number of protests that might be violating federal laws or doxing individual officers is not sufficient to justify deploying the federal military, because you can still have ordinary federal law enforcement officers who are able to carry out and enforce federal law, actually be in the business of arresting individuals who are breaking federal law and otherwise helping secure, safety and welfare. Similarly, state officers, there's just no reason to think that state and local officers are also unable to actually arrest those individuals who might be in violation of law. It's just never been thought to be sufficient that some individuals might be engaged in some crimes against federal personnel or on federal property to allow full-scale military deployment in American cities.
Okay, thank you all for that. Laura, I appreciate you. Lee and Ken, I'm gonna ask you to stay with me, because we're gonna talk about James Comey and how some of the president's comments might come back to haunt this case. We're also gonna have more on all this breaking news as we move forward, including which side will blink first. Next, the shutdown steering contest, back in 90 seconds.
Progressive makes it easy to see if you can save money with a commercial auto quote online, so you can get back to your monster to-do list.
Super helpful.
See if you can save money at progressivecommercial.com.
After my accident, I couldn't quite do things that I used to. My daughter introduced Bruce to me. I love his support, and when I got into martial arts, we got in it together. A real fight deserves a real boost.
That's made up out of the law.
This is so much easier than a home improvement store.
There's the measurement fee, delivery fee, recycling fee,
And installation.
Oh, no, that's not my department.
With Empire's Home Floor Advantage, we have clear, all-inclusive pricing, no surprises, and installation is on your schedule.
Call or visit EmpireToday.com and get the home floor advantage.
Today. Give it a number, you can earn your deserves.
That's 11,000.
That's just me for under 11K in less than a year.
Earn your competency-based masters at University of Phoenix.
This is the new Dell AI PC with Intel inside. It helps save you time because it does all your busy work for you, so you can get busy doing what you want to do.
Tomorrow, President Trump will meet with the top 4 congressional leaders at the White House as the clock ticks down to a potential government shutdown on Wednesday. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Dean Jeffries, along with House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune, are all expected to attend. And this comes after Trump abruptly canceled a planned meeting with Democratic leaders Thursday, calling their demands unserious and ridiculous. Well, here's what the 2 Senate leaders had to say today.
The president at this meeting is going to rant and just yell at Democrats and talk about all his alleged grievances and say this, that, and the other thing. We won't get anything done, but my hope is it'll be a serious negotiation.
What the Democrats have done here is take the federal government as a hostage, and for that matter, by extension, the American people, to try and get a whole laundry list of things that they want the special interest groups on the far left are pushing them to accomplish.
Joining me now is Ohio Congresswoman Shontel Brown. She is a member of the House Oversight and Agriculture Committees. Congresswoman, welcome so much. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. So Republicans insist they're not going to agree to Democrats' healthcare plans to pass a 7-week funding bill. And the White House threatens to fire rather than temporarily furlough, which typically happens during any government shutdown. They want to fire potentially tens of thousands of federal employees if the government shuts down. They want to blame it on Democrats. So the question is this a real threat or is this some kind of pressure tactic? And how can Democrats avoid being blamed for it?
Well, thanks for having me, Alex. Let me start out by saying where we are. Let me be clear about where we are. Trump economy is hurting American people. Prices are up, jobs are down, and my Republican colleagues in Congress and Donald Trump are on the run. Donald Trump and his rubber stamp Republicans in Congress have done everything that they can to destroy healthcare here in America. It's past time for us to cancel these cuts to lower costs and to protect healthcare. Because of Trump's big ugly bill, I want to remind Americans that 17 million Americans will lose their healthcare and over 20 million will see their premiums increase on average of $700 a year. So Democrats are wanting to make sure that we protect the healthcare. We don't want to see these Americans continue to suffer as it relates to what we're dealing with this cuts that have been established by the big ugly bill, if you will. We're talking about 22 million people and 38,000 in my district alone. This healthcare crisis is of the Republicans making, and Democrats are standing up and saying enough is enough. If you want our votes, you are going to have to negotiate with us. And one of the first rules in politics is you have to learn how to count. And yes, they need to learn how to count. And I'm talking about the Republicans.
The Senate Majority Leader, you heard him say there, John Thune, that the Democrats are making a number of demands. Is the only demand Democrats are making to sign on to this continuing resolution relative to healthcare?
Let me say this. I want to make sure that I'm protecting the people in Ohio's 11th congressional district, and I'm going to lead the negotiations to Leader Schumer and Leader Jeffries. But what we have been abundantly clear about, is that we want to cancel these cuts, we want to lower the cost, and yes, we do want to save healthcare. Is that the only thing? I'll let the leadership decide that.
So conceding on this budget battle, it could only intensify Democratic voters' claims that this party is not fighting hard enough. If Republicans don't give in to Democrats' demands, what is the plan? What is the message to voters if the administration follows through on its threats to gut the number of federal employees?
Well, let me say this. This has been an administration of retribution, retaliation, and revenge. And we have already seen a number of cuts that have been done by this administration without the government shutdown. So to try to bully, intimidate, and threaten us with that when you're already doing it is not exactly the way that we get things done. We know that what they proposed with the DOGE department has backfired. They're actually trying to rehire the people or ask the people that took buyouts to come back and return. So that to me is somewhat of an empty threat. The most important thing that we need to keep our eyes focused on is protecting the American people. This Trump economy is doing tremendous harm. This is the president who said he would promise on day one that he would lower the cost of gas, goods, and groceries. He has not done that. This is the president who also said he would be a dictator on day one. I do see him implementing dictator behavior, and what I said on the campaign trail continues to be true when we see him and how he's operating. A person who declares they want to be a dictator on day one does not stop at day one. This is a man who wants to terminate the Constitution. He said that out of his own mouth. So the bullying, the intimidation, and threats that he presents, we have to be cautious, but we also need to look at what he's been able to execute. He's been executing the worst of his campaign promises with expediency. But when it comes to doing things for the average, hardworking American family, he has done nothing.
Let's pivot to what the president is doing right now, ordering federal troops to Portland, Oregon, and their ability to use quote, full force if necessary to protect ICE facilities that he says are under siege by domestic terrorists. Now, Oregon's governor, along with police and business leaders, say troops are not needed, and Trump is painting a false picture of the city. So the question is, why is the president deploying troops around this country?
The question is, what else is new? The question is, why does the American president continue to try to distract with these performative tactics? It's because he hasn't lived up to his campaign promises. Now, let me be abundantly clear. Me and my Republican colleagues are pro-public safety. We have also recognized the First Amendment, the right to protest. This American president, Donald Trump, is continuing to trample on the Constitution. He does not believe in it. He said it himself. He wants to terminate it. So if he was serious about public safety, if he was serious about trying to make communities safer, he would collaborate. He would sit down. He would have conversations so that we can address some of the issues. But this is not one of them. Again, this is performative. It is not transformative. And that's what we get from a Donald Trump administration.
Something we saw this past week, pretty disturbing, that ICE agent shoving an Ecuadorian woman to the floor in an immigration courthouse here in Manhattan. He has been relieved of his duties. We also saw the arrest of Ian Roberts, the superintendent of Iowa's largest school district. There's several allegations he's in the country illegally. He's been placed on administrative leave while investigations conducted. But what do incidents like these tell you about the administration's agenda going after criminals in this country illegally? Because that is the stated goal.
Well, let me share some interesting statistics. Public data shows that 65% of the people detained by ICE this year had no criminal charges, and 93% had no violent offenses. So this again is something that he has failed to deliver on when he campaigned. So ICE has been lawless and reckless under President Trump. Of course, we need immigration enforcement and we need to focus on violent criminals, but that does not give ICE a blank check to be able to ignore the process, ignore the Constitution, and run around behind masks. So we will continue to use our authority on the Oversight Committee to subpoena and demand transparency as it relates to the operation of these agencies.
Okay, Ohio Congressman Sean Paul Brown, thank you so much. Next, whether the president's comments about James Comey will be enough to get that case dismissed.
A professional basketball court is almost 94 by 50 feet. An Olympic-sized pool is 50 by 25 meters. And tennis, 78 by 36 feet. Always, 100% of the time. Football, it's never the same twice. Just like the ever-changing environments, Citi's expertise and advice helps clients navigate across our global network in 180 markets. Citi, worldwide partner of the Ryder Cup.
Pronamel, clinical enamel strain, can help us to keep our enamel for a lifetime. It's backed by science. It is clinically proven to strengthen our teeth. I would recommend this toothpaste to everybody. It's really an amazing product. Allergies got you trying every trick? Grab Zyrtec, the total relief. It works fast and lasts a full 24 hours. What are you waiting for? Go disease today with Zyrtec.
Need some help.
I know. I'm going to cashdayusa.com. And if we're saying we can have the money in our account as soon as the same business day.
Go to cashdayusa.com and apply for the money you need.
My cholesterol is borderline. We can worry about it or do something about it. So I take Garvey to help maintain healthy cholesterol safely and naturally. It's odor and taste free with guaranteed potency. I'm taking charge of my cholesterol with Garvey.
Today, a reaction to the indictment of former FBI Director James Comey and questions around the independence of our Justice Department. Political party leaders speaking on Sunday shows on whether President Trump himself directly had a hand in the decision to indict.
And so when he says he doesn't like Comey, look what happened there, Kristen. The prosecutor who he appointed said there's not enough evidence to indict Comey, so he fired this prosecutor and put in someone who do whatever he wanted.
Yes, the president may not like James Comey, and James Comey may not like the president. But what in the end it's about the law and the facts, where they lead, and I trust the justice system to figure that out.
I will take issue with that. I don't think that's what he did. But what I have problems with, Jay, is the total and utter weaponization of the Department of Justice. And Comey was a primary person responsible for that.
Back with us, Leah Lippman and Ken Delaney. And so Leah, there you have Republican leaders thoroughly answering those questions, as was pointed out by Kristen. But in court, will some of President Trump's statements come back to haunt the DOJ's case? Are they enough to get everything thrown out?
They should be. So I think Jim Comey probably has the best possible version of what's called a vindictive affirmative prosecution claim. There, you are not supposed to be able to initiate prosecution based on vindictiveness, the fact that you might be seeking vengeance. You're not actually interested in prosecuting a crime, you're interested in prosecuting a person. And here you have a very public, long-running dispute between the president and Jim Comey, in which the president has called for Comey to be prosecuted, in which the president has promised vengeance and retribution, in which the president forced out the prosecutor who concluded there wasn't actually sufficient evidence to charge Comey, much less convict Comey of a crime. And then you have the president posting on Truth Social what might have been a direct message to his attorney general, or was just a careless Truth Social post, in which he was all but saying, I just want you to prosecute my list of political enemies. That should be more than sufficient to have this case dismissed. But if it is dismissed, we still shouldn't count that as a sign that all is well in our political system. The fact that the president was able to put one of his partisan opponents on this list and target of a prosecution is already so consequential and significant. You know, he was the subject of an investigation. He's going to have to face this prosecution and legal proceedings that are costly and detrimental.
You know, Ken, new U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan, she presented the DOJ's case to this grand jury alone and was rewarded with that indictment. Her name, though, is the only signature on the indictment as well. And after concerns from other senior prosecutors in office, is she going to take this case on solo until it ends? And how difficult is that going to be without having any experience prosecuting a case?
So that is a very interesting question, Alex. As Lindsay Halligan is an insurance lawyer, she's never prosecuted a criminal case, and she had trouble finding the right courtroom in the Alexandria courthouse to present this indictment to the judge the other day. And so it stands to reason that she will try to go out and find some prosecutor with criminal experience to bring this case, because it's very clear that no one in the office wants to touch it. And as Leah said, the previous U.S. attorney, who was a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney, but also an experienced prosecutor, declined to bring this case. And that's one of the reasons that he was forced out of office. And so I agree that if ever there was a case for selective prosecution, it could be this one. The issue is, though, those are incredibly difficult motions to win, because federal prosecution by its very definition is selective. And the other issue politically in this case is you have a Democrat, a Biden-appointed judge. So if this judge throws this case out on those grounds, Donald Trump is just going to say, see, look what happened, this could be a leftist judge. And maybe ultimately it'll be upheld by the appeals court, and that would be a repudiation, but that's going to take a while. But moving, even if that doesn't happen, there are factual and facial problems with this case. For example, the indictment quotes James Comey saying words he didn't say. And the questioning of James Comey in that congressional hearing was not clear at all. It was convoluted. And there's still some question about what actually this is about. We reported on Friday that it's not what people think it is. It's not about James Comey and Andrew McCabe ordering Andrew McCabe to leave. It's actually about another thing, about James Comey's aide, Dan Richmond. And so there's just there's a reason why the career prosecutors didn't want to bring this case. It's an incredibly difficult charge to prove in the best of circumstances. And so I think there's a lot of pitfalls and peril going forward for the Justice Department on this case.
Here's a logistics question, Ken. Are there even enough attorneys in the DOJ who are willing to prosecute all of these people that Donald Trump has cited and who may come down the pipe with issues, certain investigations, in the time frame that he wants? He wants this done now, right? Are there enough people to even do that?
You know, this is a very sad conversation to be having, Alex, because it shows that there is a crisis in the Justice Department and in our justice system. But the answer is a lot of good people have left the Justice Department, but they're also hiring people with MAGA leanings and inclinations, and they will find prosecutors to bring these cases. Lindsay Halligan's a great example. She was a White House lawyer with no prosecutorial experience. Donald Trump installed her as the U.S. attorney. It's possible to do that. The president wields enormous powers, and he's got people in these jobs, Pam Bondi, Pat Patel, who are willing to do his bidding. They're willing to hire the people to execute the orders. This is so different from the first Trump term, when the Justice Department was really run normally. I mean, there were Republicans at the top, the conservatives, Bill Barr and others at the top, Jeff Sessions giving the orders, but the career lawyers who have been there for years were still there, and they were still executing the rule of law. That is totally different now. It's a different place, and it really is my current former official tell me they are aghast at what is happening at the Department of Justice.
Bottom line, quickly, Leah, is the DOJ's credibility at risk?
Absolutely, it's already shot at this point, given the numerous factual misrepresentations they made in court, number of instances in which federal courts have concluded the department is either misrepresenting facts or violating court orders. So this administration should not be entitled to any kind of presumption of good faith or regularity at this point.
Leah Littman, Ken Delaney, sobering conversations, but thank you guys. New speculation surrounding Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's gathering of top generals, rather, a retired lieutenant general for waiting next.
Dry-eyed, still gritty. Let them feel. Remove contact lenses before using them. Wait at least 30 minutes before putting them back in. Eye redness and blurred vision may occur. Ask about prescription dry eye drop MyGo.
Consumer Cellular knows there are a lot of offers flying around, but they slip away too fast. We don't play games. What you see is what you get. Bet you're glad you wore cargo pants. See how we can cut your bills. Call Consumer Cellular.
I love my work caring for people. I often assist women who struggle with urinary incontinence, women who have fallen trying to reach the bathroom, or who have damaged skin from too much wetness. It can take a toll on them. At home, I worry for my mother. A lack of sleep due to bladder leakage affected her life. That's why I'm so glad the Purell system is available for home use. It's an innovative option for women who experience moderate to severe bladder leakage. This external system uses a soft, flexible wick placed outside the body to draw urine away from the body and into a collection canister. It's non-invasive and designed to keep the skin dry and stay in place. We trust it to help her throughout the night, so we're all better rested and can enjoy the things we love together.
Order yours online at purewickethome.com or call 800-483-3135 today. New external catheters for women and men available for home use. Call 800-483-3135 today.
More breaking news for this hour. President Trump tells NBC News he plans to attend Tuesday's rare meeting of America's top military leaders in Virginia. U.S. admirals and generals from around the world have been summoned for a short speech by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth in Quantico. But the president's presence adds new security concerns and a more political tenor to the whole affair. Joining me now, we have Lieutenant General Mark Hertling, retired commander of U.S. Army Europe. Thank you so much for being here, sir. Look, after much secrecy and speculation around the reason for this meeting, NBC reports the defense secretary is going to give a short speech on the Pentagon's accomplishments and his vision of warrior ethos. But does Trump's presence suggest something else could be going on?
Yeah, well, this has bounced back and forth a couple of times, Alex. It's been fascinating because just the other day over the weekend, or on Saturday, Secretary Hegseth's team said that this would be an event that lasted about an hour, which brought a bunch of fervor of why would you bring so many people from all over the world to just have him give this speech about warrior ethos, and I can define that for you if you'd like. But now that the president is coming over, it's going to certainly add more to the security arrangements, but I would suspect it's also going to last a whole lot longer than an hour if the president gets on the stage and turns this into a rally type event.
Look, General, by your description and by sort of what we all in the media have been observing, it just seems like there must be something more. It does not make sense to spend millions of dollars that it is going to take to bring hundreds of the top brass from around the world and their secretaries and other, assistants in with them. I mean, literally taxpayers will be on the hook for millions of dollars. So could there be something else here?
Yeah, Alex, the other night when this was first announced, I kind of outlined the kinds of things that might be involved in this. It could be talking about a shifting national security strategy. It could talk about potential cuts to the officer corps, the general officer corps. Secretary Hegseth has talked about many times. It could talk about, what is the military going to do if there's a budget stalemate, which occurs on a vote in Congress the next day? Is it concerns over leaks that the secretary has had? Is it just a pep talk about what he expects of his soldiers or what he expects his leaders to tell his soldiers? Or is this just plain performative theater? It could be any number of those things. And truthfully, as a former senior officer, yeah, I put myself in the position of what would I have done had I been called for this? Well, I would have prepared. I would have done sort of an analysis. What are the kinds of things that might be broached in this kind of meeting? Would there be any requirements for me to say something as a 3-star general? There's going to be a whole lot of service chiefs there, 4 stars, 3 stars, all the way down to 1-star commanders. That's an awful lot of people, and they're senior enlisted advisors. So you're talking, the Washington Post, it would be 800. I'm suspecting it's going to be a whole lot more than that. And now that the president's coming, you can bet there's going to be civilian leadership from the Department of Defense and maybe even the State Department, as well as some of the president's staff.
Another thing, General, and I know you had brought this up in something that I read you wrote, this could potentially send some sort of a red flashing light to our adversaries that says to them, this doesn't make sense to us. Something might be wrong inside the Pentagon. Expand on that.
Yeah, well, we have been focused on it from a national perspective, Alex. I've watched the media all throughout these last couple of days since it's been announced, and it's all about what are the generals going to do, and how are they going to get there, and how much is this going to cost, and what is the plan of the administration. But what I'll tell you, having spent more than a third of my life overseas, I would be interested in what our allies and even our foes are thinking about this. What is going on in the U.S. Department of Defense or Department of War, whichever one you call it, and how does this meeting portend some changes in terms of what the U.S. military does? Having spent a lot of my time in Europe dealing with the 49 different allies we have there and partners, I will tell you, I also got some text messaging and phone calls from people that I used to work with saying, hey, Mark, can you tell us what's going on? You know what's happening. And truthfully, I couldn't give them a clue. And so they are concerned, our friends, and certainly our foes are watching it to see what the American military may do next.
I'll tell you, Lieutenant General, it's going to be a very important meeting. I would be very happy to have you back on next weekend to talk about what we do find out. In the meantime, thank you for this appearance. We have a lot of breaking news to get to, including the latest on a mass shooting at a church in the Midwest. I'll be right back.
Amazon offers hourly employees health care on day one for the whole family.
Amazon hourly employees are an average of over $23 an hour.
All right, what do we think?
Megacom.
Megacom. Oh, this is smart now.
Imagine if we could tell everyone here that Liberty Mutual customizes car insurance to save people hundreds. Oh, what's this? A fan is running onto the field and he's not wearing pants. You burn speed bumps. And the control room sensitive.
Only paying for G.
Nature Made. Suits yours every day. Take charge of your gut with Nature Made. Clinically studied probiotics that support your digestion.
Is this the episode with the breakup? Rebo, we can't agree on the house. YummyReal.com. With over 500,000 new listings every month, you can find one today. Yeah, better put a key ring on it.
Today, business happens virtually everywhere. That's why you need Super Mobile from T-Mobile.
Best plan for the best network. The first of its kind plan that lets you run your business from your phone, like never before.
In moments of high demand, T-Mobile's network adapts. Put your business connection first. All backed by America's largest satellite network, Super Mobile. The best business plan on the best network. You won't believe where I am.
At the top of the hour, good day to all of you from MSNBC World Headquarters here in New York. Welcome everyone to Alex Wood Reports. We begin with the new developments on today's breaking news. Right now, A search is underway after a shooting and fire at a church in Grand Blanc, Michigan. Police are looking for more victims in the charred remains of that church building where officials say a gunman began shooting and set a fire earlier this morning. We know at least one person is dead, several others have been injured, we believe up to 10 were suffering gunshot wounds, and this investigation is just beginning. NBC's Maya Evelyn is following this story closely for us. Maya, welcome. So what have we learned from authorities, and where is this investigation right now?
Yeah, hi, Alex. Well, we know that there's no longer a threat to the public because police say that once this suspected gunman entered the church and police arrived to the scene, they engaged in fire with the suspected shooter and neutralized the threat. He is dead. We also know that when police came, they said that the shooter had an assault rifle. Take a listen to some of the presser we just heard from the police chief of how this all unfolded.
What we know right now is that a 40-year-old suspect from Burton, he's a male, he drove his vehicle through the front doors of the church. He then exited his vehicle, firing several rounds at individuals within the church. 10 gunshot victims have been transported to local hospitals at this time, including one who has been deceased. During all this incident as well, there was a fire that occurred, and we believe that was deliberately set by the suspect.
Police also say that there were hundreds of people inside this church. They were actively in service when all of this happened. That fire has since been contained, but investigators say they expect to find potentially more victims of this crime once they sort through everything and really get inside there. The FBI is also helping in this search. There are local authorities, national, trying to understand the motive and how this exactly happened. We are expecting to hear from officials again there around 5 p.m. for another presser, and hopefully we'll get more details around all of this. Alex?
Okay, Maya, thank you so much for that. And as we're giving you all the new video into us, you can see that is one heck of a fire, absolutely engulfing that entire facility there. Again, it was a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, commonly known as the Mormon Church, there in Grand Blanc, Michigan. It's a suburb of Flint, Michigan. It's about an hour or so away from Detroit. Let's bring in Rob D'Amico, MSNBC National Security Intelligence Analyst and former FBI supervisor. I got to tell you, Rob, everything about this story is absolutely horrifying. As Maya was reporting, and as we learned from that police chief in Grand Blanc Township earlier, this is a suspect who drove the car through the front doors of the church, but perhaps even more horrifyingly, aside from opening up on the hundreds of congregants there using an assault rifle, killing one, injuring at least another 10. This fire was started. They don't know how it was started, but it appears that people were trapped inside that church. So let's talk about what the FBI does at this point. I think we understand what 100 agents are going to be on scene there. Where does the FBI even begin in an investigation like this?
Well, the first part is talking to the witnesses, finding out what they have to say. There's hundreds of them, so there's going to be a team doing that. And then, as the sheriff said, they're going to start doing a search warrants for residents, anywhere he's known to live, storage locations type thing, anything that comes up. And then there's electronics. Again, they want to look at the motive. They want to look at, how long was he planning this? It talks to, when you look at the fire and trying to understand what happens, because even the sheriff doesn't know exactly how that fire started, but figures it was started by the subject. Did he bring accelerants into with his car? He did the shooting, then started the fire, because the police had to take some time before they got there to engage the shooter. So there was a bit of a time between that. The fact that they couldn't get out, because it looks like maybe a one-story, maybe possibly two-story building. And if there's windows, again, how did they get trapped? Because he said that did he get them into a room and then lock it and block it? Like, thought went into this. So trying to understand that, but the FBI is just going to assist in that. And I think part of it's going to be figuring out, like, we talked how many weeks ago about the shooting at the church, at the school, and when they're in there. And we talked about security for it. We talked about putting people out front and doing other things. This wouldn't have stopped that. Driving a vehicle through the front door is
cement stanchions that go down, or huge, like if you look in front of the FBI headquarters, there's these huge planters there, and that's to prevent vehicles from getting into the building. Is that what we're gonna have to start doing now at churches, putting in concrete stanchions that have poles into the ground, so you can't drive a vehicle into it? Because all the security methods we talked about last time, this would have broke it, because if someone was guarding the front door, and they drive a vehicle through, so now we have another thing to start worrying about. So it's getting to the point where it's out of control of how do you do proper security at places of worship and other places that people gather. So I think this is changing it, because it's just another incident, another method. But it's again, thinking of the worst way to go is trapped in a fire to me. It's one of those that you're helpless and you can't get there. So I know if there's windows in those locations, people would have been breaking them and getting out. So trying to understand how this went down, I think at 5 o'clock when the conference comes on, we're gonna have a lot more answers. It was good that the sheriff got out, explained what happened, to get those initial things done and say, hey, we'll get those answers back to you later.
Yeah, you know, it's a point that you make. It is so sad that across this country, you hear reports of so many churches now having literally armed congregation members, taking shifts. I mean, they'll sign up for one Sunday or a Saturday and sort of take their post to make sure nothing like this happens to the people that are worshiping with them, which is a very tragic commentary, frankly. But with regard to the speed with which they were able to, as they say, neutralize, we understand the shooter is dead, neutralize him. There was one police officer, we're told, and someone who serves in the game department in the state of Michigan, literally a state employee. Apparently they're all trained, have to be trained. You think a game warden would be somebody who's dealing with life out in nature, but I guess the training now extends to this kind of work throughout all manners of law enforcement.
Yeah, absolutely. What we've seen is it was ever around quickly. So the training that FBI puts on active shooter training, a bunch of contract companies do that too. And what you want to do is get everyone in the area, because when the call goes out on the radio, it's who's closest to get there. And I'm sure probably what happened was the police officer heard it and the DNR officer heard it. They probably arrived right in around the same time, and they probably looked at each other, nodded off, and went into the building. That's usually kind of how things happen. But they do train like that. You now are training across the entire law enforcement spectrum. They'll probably have an active shooter training where everyone comes, so that they understand like those initial tactics. Everyone kind of knows it, so that when just one or two people from different agencies get there, you can do the best you can do. Because it's always better to go in with two than one. But if one goes in, the other one shows up shortly, he's going to know what the other one's probably going to do. So it's a matter of back in Columbine, the law enforcement kind of waited, because that was the tactic before, to wait. And then they figured out, wait a second, that's not working. People are, especially kids, are dying. Get law enforcement in there quickly. And then you have the fire department showing up. Not sure exactly, as you look at all the social media that's going out in the beginning of one of these, it's confusing to try to figure out. That's what's happening to first responders. We're hearing calls from people calling in to 911. 911's trying to put it out. They're trying to get to the scene and figure out what's going on. So now you have active shooter, and then the fire department gets alerted. Are we walking into a firefight? It's not like they're not going to get there and do something, but you do have to take precautions if the shooter's not down. So that might have delayed that, and that's how that fire got even more energy, because they were waiting to figure out if he's actually neutralized.
Yeah. Okay, Rob D'Amico, thank you so much. And as you mentioned, there'll be another news conference at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll, of course, here at MSNBC be covering that. I will see you again, my friend. We have more breaking news to share at this hour. That being New York City Mayor Eric Adams has dropped his re-election bid. He's posted a video to social media just within this past hour or so, in which he did not endorse any of the remaining candidates. Take a look.
And yet, despite all we've achieved, I cannot continue my re-election campaign. The constant media speculation about my future and the campaign finance board's decision to withhold millions of dollars have undermined my ability to raise the funds needed for a serious campaign.
Joining me now, we have Republican strategist Susan Del Percio, of course, an MSNBC political analyst and one-time advisor to former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo and current mayoral candidate Andrew Cuomo. So Susan, your initial reaction to this, even though Adams did not endorse anyone, is he doing this to try to clear a path for Cuomo? And what do you know about their relationship and if you think he would be leaning in that direction?
Their relationship at one time was very good. It is not and had not been especially since the primary, or even the fact that Andrew Cuomo got in the race at all. He said he would not if Eric Adams was running. So that created some bad blood and it only got worse. I'm not surprised that Eric Adams didn't endorse anyone. He wouldn't endorse Andrew Cuomo. And I don't think he would go after Mamdani, but the reason for that is I think he backed down for one of the reasons he said, which is really unusual to hear from a politician. You can believe what he said about the campaign finance board. He doesn't have the money to run, and he doesn't have the union support, so he can't really put on a campaign. But at the same time, he may have bought just a little goodwill with people who can help him with his future by stepping aside, because there has been a lot of pressure put on Eric Adams and the Republican nominee, Curtis Sliwa, to step away from the race. Now, that doesn't mean he won't be on the ballot, Alex, but Eric Adams will be on the ballot, no matter what happens. He's still on the ballot, and frankly, he has a lot better ballot placement than Andrew Cuomo does. So that's how we're seeing it right now.
So when you say he may be appealing to those who can help with his future, are you talking about local New York City or New York State, or are you thinking someone in Washington?
Could be someone in Washington. We know he's definitely branched out his connections there, but most likely someone from New York who he knows, who probably has some connection to Washington. But either way, there's been, especially from certain industry folks, asking him to step away. Again, it buys him a little goodwill, but not enough, because it won't make a difference in the race whatsoever. He only has about 7-8% of the vote. So even if it all goes to Andrew Cuomo, which is doubtful, it doesn't get nearly enough for Andrew Cuomo to win the race.
So that's the question, what does it do to Zoran Mamdani's chances? Does it affect them at all in a negative way? We have state and national Democrats who are increasingly rallying around him, but is it enough with a less splintered field?
It's not enough to stop Mamdani at this point. Let's be clear. Mamdani on the ballot is going to be number 1 and number 4. Curtis Sliwa will be number 2 and number 5. There's a conservative candidate on the third line. But you're going to have to search for Andrew Cuomo there. And Andrew Cuomo's unfavorables are through the roof. He's never gotten over from the numbers he had when he got into the race. So Mamdani's numbers may soften a bit, but for Andrew Cuomo to pull it out, he need all 15% of whatever Curtis Sliwa's Republicans could bring. And there is no way, Alex, that you're going to see hardcore Republicans breaking for Andrew Cuomo. And furthermore, I don't think Curtis Sliwa's going to get out of the race, and he does have cash. There's about $3 or $4 million in the bank, which is enough to target Republicans to keep the race away from Andrew Cuomo.
I was about to say, I got a statement from him, and he says, Curtis Sliwa I'm talking about. Curtis Sliwa was the only candidate who can defeat Mamdani. Our team, our resources, our funding are unmatched. Most importantly, we have the best solutions to help working people afford to stay in New York City and feel safe. Your reaction to that is from a spokesperson, it wasn't from him himself.
Yeah, it's a great statement to put out there, and it's just to reassure his supporters. Again, that 15 or 14% of the voters out there, that he's still there. And there will be Republicans who want to take a stand to support the Republican candidate and who really dislike Andrew Cuomo. So he's just saying, I'm not going anywhere, and I'm going to keep fighting.
Okay. Susan Del Percio, you'll be back again soon, my friend. Thank you so much. Our White House reporter just spoke with President Trump. What he told her, when we're back in a short 90 seconds.
Let me tell you right? If you feel safe and protected out there.
That's why I never leave home without photo of the little ones.
Great foot from my husband. Lucky rabbit's foot.
Lucky rabbit named Sweet. It's sweetest. That's a little rabbit named Sweet.
Well, there's really no need for a Lucky Charm when you ride.
Not when America's #1 motorcycle insurance got your back.
We're just gonna roll aside the call of the letter.
Name's Steve. When Betty and George switched to consumer cellular, it saved them a lot, so they started splurging on data. No, don't you dare. Quiet days. See how we can cut your bills. Call consumer cellular.
A professional basketball court is always 94 by 50 feet. An Olympic-sized pool is 50 by 25 meters. And tennis, 78 by 36 feet. Always, 100% of the time. But golf, it's never the same twice. Just like the ever-changing environments, Citi's expertise and advice helps clients navigate across our global network in 180 markets. Citi, worldwide partner of the Ryder Cup.
After my fall, when I was recovering, my doctor recommended Boost. Today, I'm back out on the ranch, working and riding again. A real comeback deserves a real boost.
17 past with more breaking news at this hour. Just a short time ago, NBC White House correspondent Amy Shelton spoke exclusively with President Donald Trump. So, Yamisha, welcome back. What did he tell you about the accusations that the James Comey indictment is just the beginning of his administration's retribution tour?
Well, as you said, I spoke exclusively with President Trump, and I talked to him specifically about whether or not he wanted to see former FBI Director Christopher Wray investigated by the DOJ. Now, my question to him was, do you want to see him charged like James Comey, who of course was the other former FBI Director that has been in the news? The president said, I think Christopher Wray did a terrible job, and we just found out about it. Over 200 people being embedded into that situation, talking about the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. And the president said, and Christopher Wray never said that. In fact, he did the opposite, and I think that's very inappropriate what he did. And I said, well, do you think the DOJ should investigate this and launch some sort of investigation? The president said, I would certainly imagine, I would think they are doing that. The president, of course, is being adamant that he believes the former FBI director lied. Kash Patel, his current FBI director, partially in some ways contradicting what the president saying, while still criticizing the FBI's actions during January 6th. I want to read to you part of what he wrote. He said 274 FBI agents were thrown into crowd control on January 6th against FBI standards. So he's saying crowd control, not embedded. And he said that failure was on corrupt leadership thanks to agents stepping up and the truth coming out, transparency, justice, and accountability. So while they're saying slightly different things, but the FBI director, the current one, Kash Patel, is saying that there still needs to be accountability for the actions of the FBI. Alex?
Okay, let's talk about what you got from the president regarding his plan to send federal troops to Portland, Oregon. What did he tell you?
Well, I was interested in talking to President Trump about Portland, Oregon, because he has been signaling that he might be sending federal troops into that city, even though the governor of Oregon has said that she spoke to President Trump directly and said federal troops are not needed there. I want to read to you part of what the president told me. He said, they are attacking our ICE and federal buildings all the time. This has been going on for years in Portland. It's like a hotbed of insurrection. It looks terrible. Can't have that in an American city. So the president telling me he's still weighing his options and deciding whether or not he wants to send federal forces into Oregon. He also told me that he's still interested in sending federal forces into Chicago, though right now he said FBI agents have been able to bring down the crime. Local Chicago leaders have been critical of the president's plans and say that crime has gone down because of efforts that local officials have been doing, Alex.
Yeah, he hasn't gone full force into Chicago. He kind of leapfrogged that and went right to Memphis. That building there, and now we've got Portland on the horizon. Okay, thank you very much, Shanish, for that. Joining me now, we have former Department of Homeland Security Chief of Staff and spokesperson for EndPresidentialRevenge.org, Miles Taylor, former DOJ pardon attorney and federal public defender, Liz Oyer, and Central White House correspondent Shelby Talcott. Welcome to you all. So, Miles, you first here. President Trump referred to Portland as war-ravaged and under siege by Antifa and other domestic terrorists. What is his goal with these federal troop deployments across this country?
Alex, his goal is to suppress the political opposition and to consolidate his power. And I'll tell you why, because initially, when Donald Trump started talking about troop deployments around the United States, he and his allies said it was all about immigration. They were just doing this as part of the mass deportation efforts in the United States, that ICE needed an additional assist.
and that they would, go in the process, bring down crime. Now that's completely out the window. You don't hear Donald Trump saying that these troops are going to Portland to assist with deportation operations. It's what many of us have warned all along. He wants U.S. troops in U.S. cities that are accountable to him so he can enforce his edicts, but also so that he can put pressure on the political opposition. But I'll also go a step further, Alex, because I had a lot of conversations with the people who are working these policies behind the scenes. In the first Trump administration, I spent a lot of time with Stephen Miller and people like that at the White House. And I know that these guys want to create a flashpoint, a conflagration. They want to intimidate the opposition to overreact, to become more violent, so that in the eyes of the public, they have justification for a further crackdown. That is what is happening here. That is what I am going to be looking for in Portland. And if past is prologue, they might get that because they know that the last time they deployed forces in Portland at the end of the first Trump administration, it led to an increase in violence, not a decrease in violence. And I think that's what they are hoping for so that they can expand their crackdown.
Can I ask, I'm going to ask about legality in a second, but Shelby, really quickly, what are you hearing about a timeline for deployment and what troops would be involved?
Well, we did hear the president over the weekend say that he was directing his Secretary of Defense, or now called the Secretary of War, to deploy troops. But a timeline still seems a little bit mushy. And I think part of the reason of that is oftentimes the president is using these sort of threats, which he does fully intend to sort of move forward, as a precursor, as sort of a pressure campaign to try to influence some of these local officials to making the changes that he wants to see. I think that's part of the reason that we've seen him sort of pull back in places like Chicago. But certainly, if Portland is not going to do what the president wants, then I would anticipate that there's going to be troops in there, whether they want troops in there or not, within the coming weeks.
Liz, legally, is there anything to hold the president back from doing this? It's been suggested that all these cities are trying to, I guess, combat the presence of troops on their own individually. Is there something that can be done on a broader national scale to keep this from happening?
I think one of the problems we're seeing with how Donald Trump is approaching implementing his agenda is that he just goes for it regardless of whether it's legal or whether it will ultimately hold up in court once it's challenged. And by the time the judicial process plays out, the damage is already done. He's done this in so many different contexts where he just goes in there and starts acting. And generally, the Supreme Court has been very reluctant to allow any injunctions to stay in place while Donald Trump is carrying out his agenda. So he has been given really a strong license by the Supreme Court to implement his executive agenda as he sees fit while the judicial process plays out. And I would expect that the same thing will happen here.
But the judicial process did play out with a judge saying that the way he went into Los Angeles was illegal. It's as if the president is just running roughshod over that, with the rule of law.
Yeah, Donald Trump has no respect for the rule of law, and rulings of judges in one district aren't necessarily binding elsewhere. So he keeps trying the same move throughout the country. Once it's declared illegal in one place, he does it again somewhere else without any regard to what the likely outcome will be in the courts. He really has little to no respect for courts, little to no respect for the rule of law. All he cares about is pursuing his political agenda at all costs. And so he's doing that very, very aggressively with people like Stephen Miller, as Miles mentioned, egging him on.
Respect for the rule of law and all that. I want to pick up on that with you, Liz, as we talk about the charges brought against former FBI Director James Comey. How much lasting damage does his indictment do to the respect, the faith in the rule of law in the DOJ?
Yeah, this is really a crisis point for our justice system. It's a tipping point for the legitimacy of our justice system. This is not about James Comey at all. Many people have various complaints on both sides of the aisle about James Comey, but this is about the integrity of our justice system. Donald Trump appointed a sham prosecutor to seek an indictment that none of the career prosecutors in this office thought was based in fact or law, but he insists on pursuing it anyway, and that is just the tip of the iceberg for what we're going to see in terms of revenge prosecutions by the Trump administration. He has a long list of enemies who he is
familiar with what Columbia is going through, I'll remind our viewers, back in April, Trump signed that executive memo accusing you of manufacturing stories to sell a book and ordered his administration to investigate you, revoke your security clearances. Explain, Miles, why Americans, regardless of how they feel about you or James Comey, why should they be worried about their rights after this indictment?
Well, look, an investigation into or a prosecution of myself or James Comey or John Bolton is not something that just affects us. It affects any American. And here's why. We learned two things this year about the rule of law in the United States. One, we learned that the President of the United States believes that he has the power with the stroke of a pen to order an investigation into anyone. That's what he did to myself, Chris Krebs, and others. And then we just learned this past week that he also believes with the social media posts that he can induce an indictment into anyone. He can bring charges against anyone with the stroke of a pen, with a few keystrokes. That wasn't the case until 2025. And I've said the past few days, I think this is the week the rule of law died in the United States. And that sounds very dramatic. But this is very dramatic. It's important for people to realize when we talk about the rule of law, Alex, we're talking about the equal implementation of the law that has nothing to do with people's political opinions or class or status, that the law is enforced blindly in the United States to those factors. This is the week that we have proven, the Trump administration has proven that is no longer the case because the law is being weaponized against his adversaries, but that's not all. The law is also being weaponized to protect his allies. We have seen the Justice Department in recent weeks and months drop cases into companies and individuals Trump favors. So the rule of law is definitionally being applied in a selective manner and a vindictive manner. And you can't say anything other than it is a deeply, deeply unhealthy situation at best for the rule of law in this country. Or again, at worst, this is the week it died. And we're going to spend the next few years focusing on how on earth can we resurrect it.
Are you worried, Miles?
Well, look, I'm not worried about me. I expect this to happen, Alex. I expect it to get worse. And I expect that because me and my wife and our family continue to speak out, that yes, at some point, we are going to end up in a situation like James Comey. But I would tell people not to be afraid of that because we are on the right side of history here. And we have to be able to expose how bad this is by continuing to speak out. If people cowered, if James Comey had cowered in the wake of this, it would have sent a very bad signal to people who are far less prepared than him to be on the receiving end of presidential revenge. But you know what he said in his message? He said, don't be afraid. We'll have a trial. I am innocent. And he showed people it's okay. And just today, Alex, he put out another video talking about the importance of voting, talking about the importance of Article 3 and the courts, and he will continue to speak out. That's the message we have to send, regardless of what happens to me and my family. We will not shut up. We will continue speaking out and defending people who are the targets of that revenge.
So Liz, we have NBC News reporting that career prosecutors told newly appointed U.S. Attorney, interim attorney, we should say, Lindsay Halligan, they did not find enough evidence to indict Comey. Are you surprised the DOJ actually convinced the grand jury to charge him? And how hard does this become for prosecutors to get this past a judge, first of all, if not onto a trial jury?
A grand jury is a much different type of proceeding than a trial jury. A grand jury is really a tool of a prosecutor. So the fact that an indictment was returned does not indicate that the charges have merit or will ultimately hold up at trial. A grand jury has to vote by majority to return charges. It doesn't have to be unanimous as a trial jury does. They apply a much lower standard of proof. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt applies only at a trial. Grand jury has to find just a preponderance of the evidence. But the most important difference is that only the prosecution presents evidence in a grand jury. It is a closed, secret proceeding. There's not even a judge in the room. It's just a prosecutor and the grand jurors. And the prosecutor can say anything they want without being checked, essentially. They can present evidence that's hearsay. They do not have to present any mitigating facts or any theory of defense. And for that reason, it's very easy to secure an indictment by a grand jury. And the fact that that was what happened here does not mean that these charges will ultimately hold up in the long run in court.
Thus the explanation for the phrase, "You can indict a ham sandwich." That being said, last question to you, Shelby. President Trump said that Comey's indictment was quote about justice, not revenge. Despite all of his past threats of retaliation, he has hinted that there'll be more charges against his political opponents, and they're coming. What are you hearing out of the White House about who could be next?
I mean, we are hearing any number of people. You just had that image showing all of the people who are currently under investigation. I'm expecting that at least some of them are going to face indictments in the coming weeks or months as well. And what President Trump said publicly about expecting there to be more, that's the general consensus inside the White House as well. And I think it's also important to note that when the president is talking about sort of all of these folks and these indictments, the overarching theme is, of course, what he was going through over the campaign. And that's something that he has really kept with him. And it's influencing a lot of these decisions that you're seeing now. The other aspect is, of course, the difference between the first Trump term and this Trump term, which is that this Trump term, the administration really made sure to have people who were completely aligned with the president's agenda. And so you're not seeing necessarily as much of the pushback that you might have seen in the first administration to things like this.
Okay. Miles and Liz and Shelby, it's good to see all three of you. Thank you so much. What's being done to avoid a government shutdown next?
There's the measurement fee, delivery fee, restocking fee, and installation. That's not my department. With Empire's Home Floor Advantage, we have clear all-inclusive pricing.
Yeah, dude, that doesn't look good. No, yeah. What a USA.com. I can find minutes in the truth. Nobody is going to say this is bad.
Go to cashnetusa.com to apply for the money you need.
We are less than 3 days away from a potential government shutdown. Congress facing a September 30th deadline to reach a deal to fund the government. President Trump plans to meet with congressional leaders tomorrow at the White House to discuss a potential deal. But Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer suggests don't read too much into that meeting.
Well, it depends on the Republicans. You know, the meeting is a first step, but only a first step. We need a serious negotiation. Now, if the president at this meeting is going to rant and just yell at Democrats and talk about all his alleged grievances and say this, that, and the other thing, he won't get anything done. But my hope is it'll be a serious negotiation.
Joining now, Molly John Fast, MSNBC political analyst, special correspondent for Vanity Fair, and host of the Fast Politics podcast. MSNBC Capitol Hill reporter Kevin Fry, and MSNBC White House correspondent Laura Barone Lopez. So Laura, you first here. What is the White House going to be gaining from tomorrow's meeting?
Well, what the White House wants is what Republicans in Congress want, which is that they want Democrats to agree to stopgap, clean funding bill to fund the government. And, you know, they may be willing to talk about an agreement on these expanded Affordable Care Act subsidies that are set to expire at the end of the year, but they don't want it to be connected to the bill that would fund the government. Now, I'll say that I asked Pete Aguilar, the third-ranking House Democrat, earlier today, if they would be okay with that, and he said no, Democrats are not okay with that. That they want this all-in-one bill, an agreement that happens all at once, because they're warning that millions of Americans could lose health coverage.
What about the White House, though, Laura? Is it worried that a shutdown could hurt it politically? Is
at least, the president doesn't seem too concerned about it. He has said multiple times that he doesn't think a meeting is going to be productive. That's why he canceled the meeting that was supposed to occur with the Democratic leaders last week. They are threatening, the White House is threatening, OMB Director Russ Vought, has said that they would fire, hundreds of federal workers if a shutdown occurs to apply pressure on Democrats. You know, of course, I don't believe that those inside the White House necessarily want a shutdown. We know that, what shutdowns can do to the party in power. It doesn't always necessarily help them. That being said, we're pretty far out enough from the midterms that the White House is feeling confident that this won't necessarily be something that hurts the president.
So Cabinet Republicans obviously control both chambers of Congress as well as the White House, but Senate Majority Leader John Thune is blaming Democrats for this impasse. Listen to what he told Tristan Walker this morning.
And what the Democrats have done here is take the federal government as a hostage, and for that matter, by extension, the American people, to try and get a whole laundry list of things that they want the special interest groups on the far left are pushing them to accomplish, and using a 7-week funding resolution, which is designed to give us time to do the normal appropriations process. They're using this hostage, trying to get all these other things done. It's a very straightforward argument in my mind. It's simple.
Is there any truth to that?
I mean, look, this is kind of a change of what we've seen from past shutdowns where, yes, Republicans control all the levers of power here in Washington, but obviously Democrats are needed in the Senate to overcome the filibuster, to get the votes needed to actually pass this bill. So Republicans argue that they are putting forward a simple bill that will last for a few more weeks and they can continue negotiations. Democrats see this as a leverage point. They see it as an opportunity that they need to take a stand and kind of to pull back the curtain a little bit. If you remember Senator Schumer back in March, when he agreed to move ahead with the funding bill, then he was ridiculed by the Democratic base, by voters back home. His polling has taken a hit in New York. And so he also needs to, in some sense, be seen as standing up. I've been talking to Democratic aides and Democratic members. They think he's in lockstep with Jeffries and trying to push back on this, but time will tell.
Molly, I'm curious, is this backlash at all to Senator Schumer and his spring stance there? I mean, who will get blamed if there's a government shutdown?
Well, that's like the big question, is who gets blamed for a government shutdown. Usually it's the party in power. Republicans are trying to message that somehow it's Democrats' fault. Maybe that works. I don't know. Look, there are a couple questions, but I think Donald Trump making another meeting with this crew doesn't mean that he actually does care, right? Because if he didn't care, I mean, we saw the messaging around that before. So the fact that he did do that means there's some amount of him wanting to not have a shutdown. I do think it's not just Democrats who want these Obamacare subsidies. A lot of Republicans want it. A lot of Republican organizations are trying to get it. A lot of congressional Republicans want it, and they think it'll help them in the midterms. So I'm not sure this is just Democrats doing it. I also think that there isn't, shutdowns are about pain tolerance, and Republicans have a much higher pain tolerance going into this, right? Russ Vought is like, at OMB is sort of, this is his dream scenario because he can fire people. But the question is, will that hurt Republicans more? And that we don't know the answer to. And I think we're going to have to see how it plays out.
What about this question, Molly? Are Americans going to be paying attention if the government shuts down? Because it depends.